Chapter 31:18. They were clearly here to catch stolen goods. So why did the amount of stolen goods exceed the amount they should have? Just because you say they are meridian drawing pills, does that mean they are? He meowing coldly said. Of course. Ling Han seemed very confident. Why should I believe you? He meowing said disdainfully. One had to know that this vein-drawing fruit was something that her grandfather had paid a huge price to obtain. What right did Ling Han, a disciple who had just entered the sect, have to obtain it? Moreover, there were even 3 of them. Find someone to appraise them, someone said. Everyone nodded. It was a simple matter to appraise them. Who should they invite? I'll do it. A young man stood up. His looks were not bad, but he had a crafty look on his face. This voice sounded familiar. Brother Nia, Rui Yuanliang, Lao Liyan, and the others didn't dare to be slow and cupped their hands towards this person. Ling Han immediately remembered that this person was Nia Yang. This person seemed to have a big background, so it was normal for him to be invited to He Miaoying's birthday banquet. Nia Yang's status among these second-generation young masters was not low, so everyone trusted him to be the appraiser. However, in Ling Han's eyes, this person seemed to be sloppy and unreliable. Nia Yang opened the bottles one by one, and after carefully comparing them he said, From my experience, these 4 are all meridian drawing pills. What? Everyone was shocked. They were all real. Didn't Sun Jianfang only give Ling Han 3 meridian drawing fruits? Could there be more meridian drawing pills? Ling Han faintly smiled. Do you think I can't ask someone to refine them into pills? This explanation was indeed reasonable, but the problem was that the ancient Dao sect didn't have any alchemist. No, there really is. Yes, a few days ago, a mysterious person sold meridian drawing pills on the black market. Also, he used pills to exchange for fruits. Clearly, he knows how to refine meridian drawing pills. Some people immediately said, What? There really is someone selling meridian drawing pills? Some people didn't know about this and were naturally shocked. If Ling Han knows this person, then it wouldn't be strange to ask him to refine the meridian drawing fruit into pills. As long as a vein drawing fruit is refined into a pill, there should be at least 3 or 4 pills, right? So, it's not strange that 3 meridian drawing fruits can become 4 meridian drawing pills. Everyone nodded. They were all inclined to believe that these meridian drawing pills had been exchanged for by Ling Han. By the way, do you know who that woman is? Someone pointed at Call Snow. Isn't it a junior sister from the sect? Wrong. She really is a maid. More than a month ago, when I went to Ling Han's place, I saw her with my own eyes. Now that you mention it, I remember now. There was indeed such a maid. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. She used to be a maidservant, but now she had become a 2-meridian master. What did this mean? Ling Han had a lot of meridian drawing pills in his hands, so he used them on his maidservant to break her 2nd meridian. They were about to cry. How extravagant were you? No matter how many meridian drawing pills you had, you still couldn't waste them like this. How good would it be to give them to themselves? With their talent in martial art, the same amount of meridian drawing pills would definitely be more effective on them. Therefore, it wasn't strange that Call Snow had a meridian drawing pill on her. It was leftovers. Oh, I really want to be bestowed one as well. Everyone looked at Ling Han eagerly. If it wasn't for the fact that their identities as martial artists didn't allow them to, they all had the urge to hug Ling Han's thigh and become his underling. Li Zhongdan was speechless. This matter was actually resolved just like that. In his opinion, this matter was unsolvable, but Ling Han resolved it without any effort. He was naturally very clear that the meridian drawing pill on Call Snow was indeed He Miaoying's stolen property. This was because it was stolen by Rui Yuanliang and the other 2. And the 3 of them didn't hide it from him when they talked about this matter. This was too fucking strange. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, Now, I can prove my little maidservant's innocence. He Miaoying had nothing to say. She had also heard just now that Call Snow was originally a maidservant, but now she had become a 2-meridian. How many meridian drawing pills would it take to raise someone with ordinary aptitude to 2 meridians? Who would believe that someone so rich and overbearing would steal her meridian drawing pill? Even she herself couldn't believe it. Ling Han's gaze swept over everyone. No one said anything else. They all lowered their heads. He then looked at He Miaoyin and said, "Since this is a complete and utter injustice, then apologize to my maidservant." He Miaoyin was startled. What? She had to apologize? What had she done wrong? Her things had been stolen. Was it wrong for her to search for lost property? Ling Han said, "Of course it's not wrong for you to search for lost property. But your mistake is to hurl insults before you clearly understand the situation." He hadn't forgotten that He Miaoyin had called Call Snow a slut. Who could insult his own maidservant? He definitely had to return this slap to the face. Only now did He Miaoyin remember. She couldn't help but reveal a proud expression. "Even if I wronged her, so what? She's just a servant, so I can't scold her. I don't care who she was before, but now she's my maidservant. Insulting her is the same as insulting me." Ling Han's expression became cold. His gaze was like a sword as he stared at He Miaoyin. "Do you think I'm easy to bully?" Under his intense gaze, He Miaoyin couldn't help but panic. Was this really a young man? Why did she feel like he was a primordial monster? A terrifying demonic beast that stood at the peak of cultivation. She felt a strong chill from the bottom of her heart. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face as he said, "Junior apprentice Sister He, do you know the rules of the sect? What kind of crime is it to humiliate someone from the same sect?" During these past few days, he had been playing with his optical computer, so he had gained quite a bit of understanding of this world. Since he was in the ancient Tao sect, how could he not understand the rules of the sect? He Miaoyin was startled. In the sect, humiliating someone from the same sect was a serious crime. If it really got out of hand, even though she was the granddaughter of an elder, she would still be punished. At the very least, she would be whipped in front of the sect. With her grandfather's care, she believed that even if she was whipped a few times, it wouldn't hurt. But the problem was, how embarrassing was this? She quickly calmed herself down and said, "I'm not insulting you, I'm insulting her." She pointed at Huan Shui. Ling Han nodded. "It's good that you admit it." "What did I admit?" A bad feeling appeared in He Miaoyin's heart. Ling Han indifferently said, "According to the sect's rules, as long as someone can sense a meridian, whether it's a gardener, a servant or a carriage driver, they will automatically become a sect disciple. That's why I, as a maidservant, am also a sect disciple. Since you admitted to insulting her, do you still want to deny it in front of so many people?" He Miaoyin was speechless. At this moment, her heart was in chaos and her mind was blank. "Apologize." Ling Han raised his voice. This shout was like thunder. He Miaoyin's heart was in chaos and she blurted out, "I'm sorry." Chapter 31:20. Ling Han wasn't able to continue his seclusion because Nie Yang had arrived. "You bastard, you've kept me in the dark for so long," he scolded. Ling Han laughed. "That's because you're stupid. What could I do?" Nie Yang slapped his forehead. Wasn't Han Lin Ling Han the same as Han Lin? Han Lin had indeed told him his real name, but Nie Yang hadn't connected the two names together. "I don't care. You have to compensate me," he said shamelessly. Ling Han laughed and threw over a pill bottle. "This is for you." This was something he had decided long ago. Nie Yang reached out and caught it. "Don't tell me this is a meridian drawing pill." "That's right, it's a meridian drawing pill," Ling Han said. Don't tell me you're giving it to me?" Nie Yang exclaimed. Ling Han couldn't be bothered to reply. Didn't he say it was a gift from the start? Damn, I knew I wouldn't make a wrong friend like you. You're really something. Nie Yang laughed and walked over to put his arm around Ling Han's shoulder. Ling Han took a step back, not letting him have his way. He were both men. Why are you so shy? Nie Yang teased. A show-off was a show-off, no matter where he was. Ling Han merely cast a glance at this guy and did not pay him any further attention. Haha, you still don't know, but Rui Yuanliang and the other two were miserable. Nie Yang changed the topic. After the investigation, they found out that they had stolen the meridian drawing pill and were harshly scolded by their elders. Rui Yuanliang was the most pitiful one. He only managed to get into the Qi family because he charmed the young lady of the Qi family. Elder Qi didn't like him in the first place, and now he caused such a scandal. Elder Qi hung him at the door and whipped him for an entire afternoon. Nie Yang laughed, his face full of schadenfreude. Ling Han's expression was indifferent. He didn't look too happy. If he hadn't refined the meridian drawing fruit, he would have been the one in trouble. If it wasn't for Miss Chi's plea, Rui Yuanliang would probably still be hanging, Nie Yang said slowly, as if he was looking forward to it. Are you not on good terms with these people? Ling Han asked. Of course. Nie Yang revealed a look of disdain. Those guys only relied on their seniors and their families, and relied on a lot of meridian drawing fruits to achieve their current cultivation level. They don't have much strength themselves, yet they still act so smug and look down on everyone. Pooey, yours truly is the one looking down on them. Ling Han smiled faintly. Nie Yang was indeed a little different. However, Rui Yuanliang and the others will definitely blame this on you, so you have to be careful. Even if their cultivation bases are piled up, they are still 7 meridians and 8 meridians. They still have the strength, Nie Yang reminded. Ling Han nodded. It was true that he was still no match for a 7 meridian master, but in a month or two at most, his strength would definitely catch up. If you really run into trouble, come find me. Big brother will help you solve it. Nie Yang patted Ling Han's shoulder, seeming very loyal. Ling Han thought to himself. It seemed that he indeed had a certain level of affinity, but this affinity seemed to have a limit. The people who liked him would like him more and more, while the people who hated him would hate him more and more. This is also good. Without anyone to step on, wouldn't the path of cultivation be too boring? Ancient Dao Sect Meeting Room. At the beginning of every month, Sun Jianfang would gather all the elders in the sect to discuss the sect's matters. Usually, there was nothing important, and they would leave after a short meeting. However, this time was different. Sect Master, right now the outside world is in turmoil. Our sect should also decide on a candidate for the Dao Child, and focus all our resources on one person to compete with the other powers. An elder suddenly said, That's right. He was Lao Lian's grandfather, Lao Feng. It was said that he had 11 meridians, but no one knew exactly what realm he was at. Sun Jianfang frowned. What did Lao Feng mean? Tanjing added. I also think that we should choose a Dao child as soon as possible. This old man thinks so too. He Guan nodded. Out of the 7 elders, 3 of them expressed the same opinion. What about you guys? Sun Jianfang didn't express his opinion and looked at the other 4. I agree. Qi Wu nodded. Nie Huayan Gutang and Zhuo Xingbang remained calm, as if they didn't have much interest in this matter. Sun Jianfang raised his white eyebrows and said, Then do the elders have any suitable candidates? Of course it's Li Zhongdan, He Guan immediately said. He seemed to be an impatient person. Ever since that kid started cultivating, he has always displayed outstanding talent. Moreover, he is more open-minded than others. All the disciples in the sect respect him. If he becomes the Dao child, there will definitely be no one who will have any objections. Yes. Qi Wu, Lao Feng, and Tanjing all nodded. Nie Huayan wanted to say something, but he stopped himself and continued to sit. Of course, he wanted to push his grandson, Nie Yang, out. But Qi Wu and the others had obviously formed a gang. How could he fight them alone? Therefore, it was better to let Sun Jianfang be the vanguard. However, this matter was a bit uncertain because Zhuo Xingbang, Gu Tang, and Sun Jianfang didn't have any descendants. It could be said that whoever became the Dao child had no direct conflict of interest with them. Therefore, it was very likely that Sun Jianfang would agree for the sake of the unity of the sect. Sun Jianfang pondered for a bit and said, Did you guys forget that the God Stone broke and gave birth to the God Child? Those who are not of our race must have a different heart, Qi Wu said with disdain. Who knows what kind of demon or monster he is? I think we should just kill him to avoid future troubles. This old guy was really ruthless. Sun Jianfang waved his hand. He was full of expectations for Ling Han. So how could he listen to Qi Wu and kill him? The Ancient Almighty's note clearly mentioned that the God Stone will give birth to the spirit of creation. The future of our ancient Dao sect should be on Ling Han, Sun Jianfang said. Everyone, I hope that you can set your sights further. The great era has just begun, and we don't know how long the path of cultivation will be in the future. We are only one step ahead, and we can be surpassed at any time. If we choose the right person, perhaps we can all charge to a higher peak under his leadership. Iguan laughed and said, Sect Master, I agree with you. We must choose the right person, so I'm optimistic about Li Zhongdan. We are already old and might be trapped in the 12 meridians forever, but Changdan is different. In the surging Great Era, he should be able to fight against the wind and reach a height that we can only look up to. Yes, I'm also optimistic about Changdan. Qiwu nodded. That's why now is the time to win people's hearts. We must firmly tie Changdan to our ancient Dao sect's war chariot. Sun Jianfang raised his brow. Was Li Zhongdan going to betray the ancient Dao sect? Respecting one's teachers was a basic moral principle. He slowly said, we must be careful when choosing a Dao child. Not only does he need to have prestige, but he also needs to have great potential. Since that is the case, we will use the ancient formation to select him. Chapter 31:21. Has the ancient formation been repaired? Nie Huayan asked. Sun Jianfang nodded, then shook his head. I've repaired part of it, but it's far from being able to unleash its full power. Then what do you mean by the qualifiers? Asked Gu Tang. He didn't really care. He didn't have any children, and what he liked the most was money and beauties. Therefore, as long as he could guarantee that his life wouldn't change, he didn't mind who became the Taoist. Sun Jianfang said, since it's a selection for the ancient Dao sect's Dao child, anyone who meets the age requirement can participate. After entering the ancient formation, whoever can walk out first will be the candidate for Dao child. May I ask, Sect Master, what is this ancient formation like? Tanjing asked in anticipation. If possible, he naturally wanted his own grandson to become a Dao child. However, he knew that he couldn't compare to Li Zhongdan. Furthermore, he had received benefits from Higuan, which was why he supported Li Zhongdan. But now he was looking forward to it. There are all kinds of tests in the ancient formation, Sun Jianfang said. Most importantly, if the two of them were to fight, the array would adjust the cultivation of both sides, so that the battle would be fair. It actually has such a use? The elders were all shocked. Sun Jianfang nodded. However, I don't know if the ancient formation has not been completely repaired, or if it is naturally like this. It cannot adjust the cultivation of both sides to be exactly the same. If there is only a difference of one line, then the formation will not make any adjustments. If there is a difference of more than one line, then the one with the higher cultivation will be suppressed to the point of being one line higher. All the elders nodded. This way it would be a fair fight. On the other hand, geniuses could also distinguish themselves. For example, Li Zhongdan was always invincible among those of the same level, and even if he met an opponent 1 meridian higher than him, he could still remain undefeated. However, the suppression of 10 meridians on 9 meridians was too great. Li Zhongdan could only be invincible among those of the same level, and could not fight against 10 meridians. However, even if he lost 9 meridians, Li Zhongdan would still be the same Li Zhongdan from before. In this ancient formation, his battle prowess would definitely be number 1. Iguan immediately nodded and said, Alright, sect leader's suggestion is really great. Everyone will be able to participate in the preliminary selection, and the one who stands out will be the Taoist. No one will be able to say anything. Yes, Qi Feng and the others nodded. This was indeed relatively fair, but with Li Zhongfan's strength, who could compete with him? To be honest, even if they entered the ancient array, they might not be a match for Li Zhongdan. Then it's settled, Sun Jianfang said faintly. The time is set to be 10 days later. A piece of news spread and shook the entire ancient Dao sect. Audition for Taoist. The Taoist was actually not decided by the sect master or the elders, but was instead chosen. How to choose? Everyone went to understand the situation and shook their heads. Under such rules, who could compete with Li Zhongdan? Of course, there were also a portion of people who were filled with anticipation, because the ancient formation wasn't as simple as just fighting. It also depended on luck. Perhaps if they were lucky, they might be able to be the first to escape the formation without having to fight. Everyone was making preparations. There were still 10 days left, so they naturally had to prepare well. When Ling Han heard this, he was a bit surprised. Earlier, Sun Jianfang had said that he would be given 3 years to step into the 12th meridian. When that time came, he would be appointed Dao child. Why had he suddenly changed his mind? However, in the formation, cultivation was suppressed. If there was only a difference of 1 meridian, Ling Han believed that he could still defeat any opponent. However, the problem was, why had the Dao child selection been brought forward? Was there someone messing around? At first, Ling Han did not guess the reason behind this, but not 2 days later, there was news that Li Zhongdan was going to be engaged to He Miaoyin, and the time would be the first day after the selection of Dao disciples. So it was like that. He Guan had taken the lead, and given the other elders some benefits, so that they could join forces to force Sun Jianfang to abdicate. It was Li Zhongdan again. Ling Han rubbed his chin. In truth, he didn't care much about the Dao child identity. He believed in himself, and this was not something that could be decided by the Dao child identity. However, Li Zhongdan's tricks made Ling Han extremely dissatisfied. Was he bullying others? Since Li Zhongdan cared so much about the Dao child identity, then he would take it away. Li Zhongdan? Alright, let's meet the number 1 genius of the ancient Dao sect. Ling Han used these 10 days to practice the demon monkey fist in addition to cultivating. This fist technique was really profound, and it was enough for him to study for a lifetime. 10 days later, all of the youths of the ancient Dao sect arrived before the formation. It was at the foot of the mountain, surrounded by rice fields, forests, and a river. Who do you guys think will become the Dao child? TCH, is there a need to say anything? It will definitely be senior apprentice Brother Li. That's right. Not only is senior apprentice Brother Li at 9 meridians, but he is also invincible within the same realm. No matter how you think about it, he won't be able to find an opponent. That's not necessarily true. Nie Yang and Tu Luo are not weak either. It's hard to say who will win in a battle of the same realm. You must be joking. Senior Brother Li is invincible at the same level. Furthermore, Nie Yang and Tu Luo haven't even reached the 9th meridian. How can they be his enemy when they're just 1 meridian away? That's right. The public opinion was basically leaning towards Li Zhongdan. After all, he had been a top genius of the ancient Dao sect ever since he started cultivating. Now that he had the advantage in cultivation, his chances of winning were very high. Someone called out, Li Zhongdan is here. In the distance, Li Zhongdan walked over with a delicate beauty beside him. It was He Miaoyin, who had just celebrated her 18th birthday. Li Zhongdan was wearing a green robe, which fully displayed his slender and well-built body. Coupled with his cultured and refined appearance, he was truly elegant and graceful, causing many female disciples to involuntarily scream out loud. He Miaoyin's face was filled with pride. This incomparably outstanding man would soon become her fiancé, and the ancient Dao sect's Dao child, the future sect master. These women, they're only worthy of being jealous of me. Li Zhongdan, on the other hand, had a faint smile on his face. No one could guess what he was thinking at the moment. It looks like the rumors are true. Senior apprentice Brother Li is really going to get engaged to junior apprentice sister He. I'm so envious of senior apprentice Brother Li. Junior apprentice sister He is so beautiful, and is elder He's granddaughter. Nonsense, it's clearly He Miaoyin who's climbing up the social ladder. Senior apprentice Brother Li is so handsome, and so promising. The men were jealous of Li Zhongdan, while the women were envious of He Miaoyin. Some of them even started to fight with each other. Very few people noticed that Ling Han had also walked over from another direction. He glanced at Li Zhongdan, and a knowing smile appeared on his face. In truth, he understood Li Zhongdan better than anyone else. This kind of person called himself a genius, and thought that He Miaoyin was not worthy of him. However, for his future, he had to make a sacrifice. Otherwise, with the person he loved right beside him, how could he have such an expression? Chapter 31-22. Ling Han had no interest in expressing his opinion. Firstly, he was not friends with He Miaoyin. Secondly, even if he did, He Miaoyin would not appreciate it. Instead, she would think he was purposely trying to sow discord. None of his business. Ling Han stood to the side, waiting for the array to open. Nie Yang, Lao Lian, and the others came as well. They wanted to try their best, so they would not regret it. After a while, Sun Jianfang, He Guan, Lao Feng, and the others walked over. In this day and age, every cultivator was a precious resource. However, only those who had cultivated 10 meridians had the right to become a true powerhouse. Those with 9 meridians and above could be called kings. Sun Jianfang and the others were publicly recognized as kings. Though they were all very old, their bodies seemed to hide dozens, or even hundreds of fierce tigers. Once they unleashed their power, it would be earth-shattering. Everyone knows the rules. Sun Jianfang spoke. His explanation was simple. The first one to walk out of the array will be the sexed Dao child. In addition, you can attack as you please in the array without fear of consequences. This ancient array is used to test people. If a fatal situation occurs, the person will be automatically sent out. But this also means you lose the right to fight for the position of Dao child. Alright, go on in. He waved his hand. Immediately, those who wanted to fight for the position of Dao child all entered the array. The ancient formation hadn't been activated yet, but after Sun Jianfang placed a jade pendant in it, the formation was finally activated. The originally clear land and forest gradually became blurry, as if it was covered by a thick layer of fog. Those who entered the array hurriedly ran. The best strategy was to not fight and rush out of the array as fast as possible. But as soon as they started running, they realized that something was wrong. The world that they could clearly see before had become extremely blurry, and their visibility was reduced to about 1 zhang. They immediately lost their sense of direction, and felt that north, south, east, and west were all the same. Wait for me, Li Zhongdan said softly to He Miaoyin. Her voice was gentle and intoxicating. He Miaoyin nodded. I will wait for you at the exit. The first one to walk out will definitely be you. Li Zhongdan smiled proudly and strode towards the ancient array. On the other side, Ling Han also asked the little maid to go back first while he walked leisurely towards the big array. This great formation was like a monster that devoured many people. Dense mist surged, as if it was independent from this mountain region. Ling Han strolled slowly as he observed the surroundings. Since this was a formation, it was impossible for him to be the first one to walk out just by relying on speed. Therefore, the most important thing now was not to run, but to observe. If he could discern what kind of formation it was, he could break it immediately. If he couldn't, he would have to figure out something about it. Otherwise, it would only be a waste of time and energy. He seemed to be walking casually, but he was carefully observing the situation around him, making comparisons in his mind and rebuilding. Ling Han had never seen this array formation before, but he had also studied array formations in the origin world, so there would definitely be similarities. Moreover, he now had the bonuses of various attributes. He had affinity, talent in alchemy, and of course, there was also the array formation. He caught the slightest bit of change, and all kinds of enlightenment appeared in his heart. If I take 3 steps this way, Ling Han took 3 steps to the left, and the area before him suddenly became clear. The mist seemed to have disappeared, and returned to how it was before. Not bad. Ling Han walked toward the exit, but he had only taken a dozen steps before the mist appeared again. He wasn't able to break this formation, but he had seen a bit of its secret. If I can master this formation and set it up around my residence, would I still have to worry about being ambushed? Also, when adventuring in the wild, setting it up like this will greatly increase my safety. The reason this formation was able to work is definitely because of the formation foundations buried in every corner. Yes, I'll go dig out the foundations and learn the formation runes. Ling Han's eyes lit up. He believed that this formation could trap everyone for a long time, including Li Zhongdan. He was the only alchemist in the entire ancient Dao sect, so Li Zhongdan definitely hadn't studied formations before. At the very least, he didn't have any talent in it. If they wanted to escape, they would have to measure every inch of the ground over and over again. They would also have to have an extraordinary memory to draw a map in their minds. Ling Han was not in a rush. He relied on his intuition about formations, and what he had learned so far to locate the foundations. After coming out from the God Stone, his strength had started from 0, but he didn't have to start from scratch. This was because he had unimaginable luck and a shocking understanding of formations and alchemy. Ling Han groped all the way and finally stopped. He began to dig on the ground. This was a competition within the sect, so no one was allowed to bring weapons. Ling Han could only cut off a branch nearby and use it as a shovel. He dug 3 feet into the ground, but he still didn't find what he needed. Is it not here? Ling Han rubbed his chin. Or did I not dig deep enough? Dig again. He continued to dig, and the hole became 5 feet deep, but he still didn't find the foundations. Dig another 3 feet. Ling Han gave himself a limit. After digging and digging, he dug out a large amount of soil. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. He dug it out. There was a black pillar under the ground. It looked like it was made of some kind of metal, and there was a strange glow on its surface. He reached out and pulled it out. Luckily, not much of the black pillar was still buried in the ground, so he was able to easily pull it out. However, the moment he pulled it out, the glow on it dimmed, as if it had turned into a normal iron pillar. It was about 1 foot long, and as thick as a person's arm. It was square in shape, and every side was engraved with complicated patterns. It would give anyone a headache just looking at it. Ling Han astutely discovered that after this pillar was dug out, in the surrounding area, within a radius of about 300 feet, the dense fog suddenly disappeared without a trace. With the foundation gone, the formation in this area naturally became ineffective. Ling Han observed the patterns on the foundation. These were the formation patterns, the core secret of the formation. But no matter how much he looked, he couldn't capture anything. Because if he looked away, the formation patterns would completely disappear from his mind. If he couldn't remember them at all, how could he learn them? Ancient formations are really not easy to learn. Ling Han nodded. What should he do? Should he just give up like this? Ling Han looked left and right. After confirming that there was no one around, he put the black pillar into his clothes. I'll take it back and slowly study it. Ling Han, I finally found you. A voice suddenly sounded from behind Ling Han. Chapter 31-24. Ling Han naturally would not take this little episode to heart. He had obtained an array foundation and was in a good mood. While whistling, he continued to look for a new array foundation. After a few dozen steps, he re-entered the fog-shrouded area. Ling Han slowed down and studied it carefully. This fog had a strange power. He was walking in a straight line, but after walking for a while, he would circle back to the original place. This was not the overlapping of space, but his divine sense was unknowingly affected. If my divine sense was extremely tough, this array would definitely not be able to interfere with me. At most, it would just be a fog to cover my eyes. Ling Han concluded. Interesting. He carefully judged, and soon found another place, and began to dig. This time, he had experience, so of course he was more determined. After digging about 7 feet, he found a second array foundation. After taking it, the surrounding area within 30 feet suddenly dispersed. Ding ding ding. He knocked on the 2 array foundations, making a crisp sound. This is a metal from the ancient era. It does not exist in this world. However, why do I have a feeling that this is stronger than Earth Yuan iron? Unfortunately, he did not bring his sword, otherwise, he could use it to compare and see which was stronger. He was about to leave, but he saw a person rushing in his direction. Rui Yuanliang. It was really a narrow road for enemies. It really is a narrow road for enemies. Rui Yuanliang had already arrived and said. Ling Han shook his head. You should know that stealing other people's lines is a very bad behavior. Rui Yuanliang snorted. You still don't repent even in the face of death, how sad. Ling Han smiled. I heard that you were hung up and beaten. I wonder if your injuries have healed. You. Rui Yuanliang almost went crazy. Wasn't this touching a sore spot? Besides, this was all Ling Han's fault. His chest heaved up and down a few times. He forcefully suppressed his anger and said, You can talk all you want, but when I step on you, you will regret provoking me. Ling Han spread his hands and said, It seems that you and a few people surnamed Tan worked together to frame me. In the end, you humiliated yourself. Why are you blaming me now? You still dare to say it. Rui Yuanliang roared as he charged over. This really made him sullen. He had given Ling Han a meridian drawing pill for free, while he was hung at the door and slapped. He had lost all face. He wanted to kill someone. Boom! A fist flew over, stirring up a terrifying gust of wind. However, Rui Yuanliang revealed a shocked expression. He naturally understood the approximate level of his strength the moment he attacked. 7,000 Jin. This was the power of the peak of 5 meridians. This was very normal. Ling Han's cultivation was definitely weaker than his, so the grand formation would pull his cultivation down. However, because the disparity was too great, he was still 1 meridian higher than Ling Han. What does that mean? Ling Han's cultivation should be 4 meridians. Hiss! A guy who had entered the sect for less than 2 months had actually cultivated to 4 meridians. However, Ling Han had so many meridian drawing pills and the spirit gathering formation. It was not impossible for him to reach 4 meridians in 2 months. He was so jealous that he was going crazy. He had only eaten 3 meridian drawing fruits. Compared to Ling Han, how big was the difference? Biased Sun Jianfeng was too biased. Then he would ruthlessly humiliate this guy and make him lose all face. In the future, he would find a chance to kill him. In just this instant, so many thoughts went through Rui Yuanliang's mind. Ling Han smiled faintly. The people of the ancient Tao sect practiced the square fist, and it was a simplified version. In front of him, it was full of flaws. Even if he didn't practice the demon monkey fist, with his eyesight as a former sovereign, he could easily pick out a dozen flaws. All he had lost was power. Ling Han kicked out. Bang! His kick arrived first and landed on Rui Yuanliang's chest. Under the powerful impact, Rui Yuanliang was kicked several feet into the air, before falling heavily to the ground. Rui Yuanliang let out a muffled groan and lay on the ground. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't recover. That kick was really too hurtful. He wanted to get up, but just as he raised his head, he felt a footstep on his face, forcing him back to the ground. Naturally, it was Ling Han. He was so angry that he wanted to cough up blood. He was the one who had suddenly discovered Ling Han and wanted to take revenge. How could he be the one being trampled on by Ling Han? This didn't make sense. How could Ling Han see through the flaws in his punch and use so much power? Otherwise, he wouldn't have felt so uncomfortable just taking a kick. Does it feel good? Ling Han smiled. Rui Yuanliang only wanted to kill, but with his face being stepped on by Ling Han, what else could he do but stare? He was extremely humiliated. Although he was a son-in-law and was often laughed at behind his back, in front of him, everyone had to respectfully call him young Master Rui. This was a great humiliation. Hee. Ling Han smiled and began to peel off Rui Yuanliang's clothes again. What do you want to do? Rui Yuanliang asked in shock. Previously, it was indeed painful and made him feel ashamed, but compared to taking off his pants, it was child's play. Ling Han said fiercely. Rui Yuanliang almost fainted. How could he have thought that Ling Han had such a hobby? This formation forbade killing, but he didn't seem to have heard of it. He was scared to death. If he was really killed, would the Qi family still recognize him as a son-in-law? No. He was finally scared and kept screaming. Ling Han laughed and didn't care about him, continuing to take off his clothes. Although Rui Yuanliang resisted with all his might, how could he resist? Soon he was stripped naked. No! Rui Yuanliang screamed as miserably as Yang Fei. This was the effect he wanted. Bam! He punched at Rui Yuanliang's head. At this time, the formation immediately took effect and sent Rui Yuanliang out. Thus, the people outside the formation were lucky enough to see another naked pig. That's Rui Yuanliang. Look at him, he's worse than dead. Has he also been raped? Heavens, is there a crazy demon in the sect? Everyone panicked and felt a faint pain in their buttholes. It's over. Rui Yuanliang has made a fool of himself in front of everyone. The Qi family probably won't want this son-in-law anymore. Of course, that Miss Qi is famous for being dissolute. Hee, she can just change to another man. How could she accept a husband who publicly shows off? You don't say. This senior brother Rui is really spectacular in some aspects. No wonder Miss Qi is so infatuated with him. Rui Yuanliang heard all of this and couldn't help but clench his fists tightly. Although Ling Han didn't kill him, and didn't even seriously injure him. He knew that Ling Han had ruined everything he had. He swore in his heart that no matter what price he had to pay, he would make Ling Han die. Then, he finally shed tears of humiliation. Chapter 31-25. Ling Han walked into the fog and continued to look for the array base. Since he had already found 2 strands, finding the 3rd strand naturally wouldn't be a problem. Very soon Ling Han located it. He dug 7 feet into the ground and found the 3rd array base. I can't dig anymore. Ling Han sighed. It was not that he didn't have time, but the 3 array bases were already very obvious. His clothes were bulging, and it was impossible to fit a 4th one. I can only dig again in the future. Ling Han was still thinking about it. This array should be very advanced, and it could forcibly pull the cultivation of the illuminating pulse realm to almost the same level. It was also very practical in battle. If I can simplify it and set it up at any time, then who would I be afraid of in a battle of the same level? He started to look for the exit. Not letting Li Zhongdan get lucky, he walked out first. Turn left here for 3 steps. Take 2 steps back here. The fog in front of him kept dispersing. Standing at a special node, he could clearly see the whole situation. Ling Han was surprised. He really couldn't underestimate Li Dancheng. This guy had actually walked more than half the way. If nothing changed, he should be able to walk out of the array in 2 hours. Let's meet you. Ling Han sped up. He couldn't walk in a straight line. The array would unknowingly affect his divine sense. Unless his divine sense was extremely strong, he could ignore the influence of the array. Now, he could only behave and follow the rules of the array. The distance between the two was rapidly closing, but it was still half an hour before Ling Han shortened the distance to within 300 feet. Because of the fog, Li Zhongdan didn't notice Ling Han approaching. He was still focused on exploring the path ahead. Because the distance was close enough, Ling Han found that there was something faintly glowing below Li Zhongdan's neck. With a flash, the fog would be pushed back a little, and he took the opportunity to take a few steps forward. Although his speed wasn't fast, it was stable, and he didn't have to take the slightest detour. This guy has a treasure that can break the formation, Ling Han said. However, it should only be able to reduce the power of the formation. Otherwise, he could have just walked out of it. No wonder this guy can take the lead. Ling Han walked forward, but as soon as he left the special node, Li Zhongdan's figure immediately disappeared. It didn't matter. After he took a few steps, Li Zhongdan immediately appeared in front of him again. 20 zhang, 10 zhang, 15 zhang. The distance between the two of them was very close. Li Zhongdan suddenly stopped in his tracks. He felt that something was wrong. He stopped and listened attentively. Is someone approaching impossible? He had a secret treasure that he had obtained while exploring an ancient site. Now someone said that someone could catch up to him. How could he believe it? Could it be a sniper spawned from the formation? This wasn't impossible. He had explored ancient ruins and knew that some formations could materialize energy, turning it into the shape of humans or beasts to kill intruders. He didn't dare to be careless and immediately put on a vigilant expression. The fog stirred, and after a long time, a black shadow walked out of the fog, constantly approaching. But because of the fog, he couldn't see the other's appearance at all. The body of energy was coming. Li Zhongdan had already circulated his power, ready to burst out with a 9-meridian attack at any time. The fog rose once more, and the figure finally became clear. Li Zhongdan's face instantly revealed an expression of disbelief. He blurted out, "Ling Han." Ling Han smiled faintly. Senior apprentice Brother Li seems very surprised. Li Zhongdan was very shrewd. The shock on his face had already slowly disappeared. He took a deep breath and said, "As expected of the divine stone, born with supernatural abilities." He had relied on a secret treasure to reach here. But Ling Han could actually catch up to him. Was there any other reason besides some kind of ability obtained from the divine stone? Born with supernatural abilities? Ling Han pondered for a moment. This should also count. He possessed the password to the entire origin world, which allowed him to possess extremely strong luck and affinity, as well as a special comprehension ability in alchemy and formations. Senior apprentice brotherly, shouldn't we settle our debts? Li Zhongdan didn't bat an eyelid, and even showed a hint of surprise. Junior apprentice brother, what are you talking about? It's just the two of us, and you still want to pretend? Ling Han laughed. This guy was too careful. Oh, he nodded. Senior apprentice brother, you're worried that I have a recording device on me. If I accidentally record your voice, it will expose you and ruin your long-lasting perfect image, right? Li Zhongdan shook his head with a pained expression. Junior apprentice brother, you're really thinking too much. Fine. I can't be bothered to expose your hypocrisy. Comparatively speaking, it's better to give you a good beating to vent my anger. Ling Han said. Junior apprentice brother, you seem to have a lot of misunderstandings about me. Li Zhongdan sighed. Let's fight. Ling Han was too lazy to waste words. He had always used violence to win people over. He shot out like an arrow, causing the fog to stir. He was like a celestial flying from the heavens. Li Zhongdan naturally wasn't afraid of a challenge. He revealed a cold smile. Didn't Li Zhongdan know that he was an outstanding talent of the ancient Dao sect's younger generation? In a battle of the same realm, he was invincible. He casually sent out a palm. It looked very light, but it contained supreme power. This was the 4 parts floating snow palm, which he had obtained from an ancient site. Its power was slightly weaker than the real 4-direction fist, but because he had only learned one form of the 4-direction fist, it was definitely not as good as this palm technique. With this palm strike, he was going to make Ling Han suffer greatly. Ling Han didn't retreat, and directly took it head-on. Bang! The two of them collided, and a force of 10,000 kilograms surged out, causing the surrounding fog to churn. Tung. Ling Han retreated 9 steps and Li Zhongdan retreated 3 steps. Both of them retreated a total of 12 steps, and disappeared into the fog, making it difficult to see each other's figures. Ling Han waved his hand. Li Zhongdan really lived up to his reputation. Even after his cultivation was suppressed to 5 meridians, he still had the power to suppress Ling Han. He couldn't be underestimated. However, Ling Han's battle intent was ignited. Always trampling on trash like Yang Fei and Rui Yuanliang didn't give him any sense of accomplishment. Junior apprentice brother, you're really amazing. Li Zhongdan smiled, but his heart was filled with shock. Others might not know, but he was very clear. Because of the secret treasure hanging around his neck, he could loosen the suppression of the formation a bit, so he could slowly but firmly advance. On the other hand, the suppression of his cultivation was also weaker than others. Others could only suppress him by 1 meridian, but he could suppress him by 2. He was already a genius, and was invincible within the same realm. Now that he was suppressed by 2 meridians, who could be his match? End of chapter. Chapter 31-26. Li Zhongdan had thought that he was invincible among the younger generation, but after exchanging blows with Ling Han, waves of shock rose in his heart. In terms of strength, Ling Han was only slightly inferior to him, and Ling Han's fist power was extremely condensed. This punch caused his palm to hurt, and even numb. How was this possible? With the suppression of nearly 2 meridians, and adding that he was already stronger than ordinary people, his present strength was about 12,000. From the suppression of cultivation, it could be seen that Ling Han should be 4 meridians. The strength of 4 meridians was only about 3,500 jin, but Ling Han's was 10,000 jin. How terrifying was this? His heart was so shocked that it was numb, and at the same time, boundless killing intent surged. This kind of person had to be killed, or he would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. Junior brother Ling, let your elder brother teach you how to fight. He charged over, striking out with a palm. It was light as a feather, but it carried with it a strong sound of breaking through the air, showing that the destructive power of this palm was actually very terrifying. He had a secret treasure that could counteract the suppression of the formation within a short distance. Therefore, he broke through the mist and charged towards Ling Han. It was only 12 steps. Ling Han revealed a burning desire to fight and advanced. His figure moved nimbly like a spirit monkey. It was the demon monkey fist. Li Zhongdan's palm landed, but it landed on empty air. Ling Han's fist came from an extremely tricky angle, completely out of his expectations. This was not square fist. Bam! This thought had just flashed through his mind when his left shoulder was struck by a punch. A heart-wrenching pain assaulted him, causing him to give a muffled grunt and stumble backwards. This was because he had dodged in time, or this punch would have landed on his heart. What a terrifying fist technique. Why was it even more powerful than the square fist he had learned? What fist technique is this? He could not disguise his shock. Dog-beating fist. Ling Han laughed loudly, and once again pressed forward, striking out with a punch. Not only was this demon monkey fist agile, it was also incomparably tyrannical. Ling Han seemed to have transformed into a tyrannical demon monkey, emitting boundless wildness. His fists were cunning and tyrannical, bombarding Li Chongdan repeatedly. The pain was indescribable. Li Chongdan had cultivated to 9 meridians, so his physique was naturally very strong. However, he was still in great pain after being bombarded by Ling Han. After all, it was a force of over 5,000 kilograms smashing onto him, causing him great pain. He was no longer as calm as before, and his neat hair had become messy. There was no trace of gentleness left in him. The #1 genius of the ancient Tao sect couldn't even withstand a single blow. It was not that Li Chongdan was too weak, but that Ling Han was too monstrous. In this era, who obtained the cultivation method inheritance? Perhaps there was, but it was definitely a pitiful amount. At least, Li Chongdan did not. And Ling Han's strength had become extremely pure under the tempering of the Monkey King's cultivation method. Although they both had 5,000 kilograms of strength, his destructive power was much greater than others. Adding on the demon monkey fist, which might be a secret technique from the golden age of martial art, it naturally far surpassed the square fist and the 4 parts floating snow palm. Furthermore, Ling Han's mental state as a supreme being was something that Li Chongdan could not possibly compare to no matter how hard she tried. With so many factors added together, even if Li Chongdan had the cultivation advantage of 2 meridians, it was useless. He could only passively take a beating. However, compared to Rui Yuanliang, he was much more durable. At least, he could still barely hold on, unlike Rui Yuanliang, who was kicked to the ground by Ling Han. Li Chongdan was not a match for him, so he had the intention to retreat. If he continued to fight, he would only be humiliating himself. As long as he left this formation, he would have a crushing advantage in terms of power, and he would definitely be able to find a chance to get rid of Ling Han. He had to get rid of him. This guy was too monstrous. He made a feint, turned around and ran. Pung, he exploded with power, and with a kick, his speed was extremely fast. Now, none of them had grasped any movement skills, so speed basically depended on power. With this explosion, he instantly disappeared into the fog. But Ling Han was not nervous at all, and did not give chase. Instead, he clasped his hands behind his back, and counted. 1, 2, 3. He had just counted to 9, when he saw a black shadow coming towards him from the front. Li Chongdan, you're back. Ling Han laughed, and his right fist had already punched out. This was a great illusion formation. Although Li Chongdan had a secret treasure that could dispel it to a certain extent, and was immune to it, with how fast he had run just now, the secret treasure would not be able to take effect in time. Thus, he was clearly walking forward, but in reality, he had made a circle and ran back in front of Ling Han. What? Li Chongdan's pupils involuntarily dilated, but he was a genius after all. He suddenly bent over and barely dodged this punch. Pung! Ling Han kicked out, and just happened to kick between Li Chongdan's 2 legs. Oh, even though Li Chongdan's body was very strong, no matter how much he cultivated, he would not be able to reach that point. His entire body was bent over, and his face was so pale that there was not a trace of blood in it. He stood on his tiptoes and swayed back and forth, as if he would fall to the ground with just a push. Ling Han shook his head. If Li Chongdan was placed in the origin world, he would not be considered a genius. At most, he would be slightly stronger than ordinary people. After all, this world had only just begun, and the number of cultivators was limited. Moreover, in a small place like the ancient Tao sect, It was normal for there to not be any true geniuses. Ling Han suddenly felt bored. He had thought that he would be able to step on a genius, but it turned out that he was only a little bit better than a mediocre genius. This made him very disappointed. Boring. He shook his head. Li Zhongdan really wanted to curse out loud. You beat him to that state, and you still say it's boring? He was the #1 genius of the ancient Tao sect. If he defeated him, what kind of glory would that be? It would be a great humiliation. However, Li Zhongdan couldn't even open his mouth. Right now, he deeply understood what it meant to have a pain in the ass, and this was really killing him. Ling Han stretched out his hand and tore open Li Zhongdan's collar. There was a purple pendant on his chest, and it was threaded through with a string. He pulled and the string broke, and the pendant fell into his hand. Return, return, return. Li Zhongdan barely managed to say the word I, but he couldn't say the last word. Ling Han smiled. Senior apprentice brother is really stingy. Isn't it just a pendant carved from broken wood? What kind of relationship do we have? Why are you being so calculative with me? He put his arm around Li Zhongdan's shoulder, as if they were good friends. Li Zhongdan's hand trembled as he reached out, but the pain from his lower body was too intense. It was as if he had touched his balls, and it was so painful that tears almost flowed out. How was this a pendant carved from broken wood? It was a secret treasure he had obtained from an ancient ruin that could suppress formations. Now that ancient ruins were appearing in this world, they were all protected by formations. So how useful was this pendant? It was incomparably precious. Chapter 31-28. After becoming the Tao child of the ancient Tao sect, Ling Han's treatment improved a lot. First, his residence changed. He moved from the foot of the mountain to the foot of the mountain that was closer to the top. Although Sun Jianfang had established the ancient Tao sect, he had only found a part of the ancient Tao sect's fifth scripture here. He had not obtained the true inheritance of the ancient Tao sect. Moreover, due to the changes in the world, the ancient Tao sect had only appeared in this small area. Most of the buildings were still buried in the mountain. It was not that the ancient Tao sect did not want to dig, but with the formation sealing it, no one had the ability to do so. However, after moving to a new location, Ling Han found that there were some unknown trees planted around the courtyard. Normally, there was nothing strange about them, but when he cultivated in the morning, they could gather the power of the heavens and earth, causing the courtyard to be filled with some kind of mysterious energy. As a result, if he cultivated here, his efficiency would increase by 20%. Although it was only 20%, after accumulating for a long time, it was very shocking. No wonder Li Zhongdan was so concerned about the position of Tao child. Just this benefit alone was very shocking. In addition, Ling Han had a quota of 100 jade seeds every month. As a normal disciple, he only had one per month. Also, Tao child could learn 3 moves of the true square fist. The true square fist was very powerful, and if it was suddenly used in battle, it was very likely to reverse the situation. Of course, this was only possible when the difference in strength was too great. Otherwise, forget 3 moves, even if he used all of them, it would be useless. Ling Han no longer cared about the square fist, but he also needed a secret weapon. As such, he decided not to use the demon monkey fist unless he could not defeat his opponent. He spent some time practicing the square fist. With his comprehension as an Empyrean, it was not difficult for him to understand, and he quickly mastered it. In comparison, this fist technique was very simple. It was not like the demon monkey fist, which was full of changes. Every time he cultivated it, he would gain new comprehension. The two were not on the same level at all. This area could only be considered the outer area of the ancient Tao sect. So how good could the fifth scripture he obtained here be? He didn't even get a cultivation technique. Ling Han nodded to himself. There were no cultivation methods in this world yet. Perhaps there were, but they were definitely pathetically few. However, as the Great Era progressed, there might be a large number of cultivation methods appearing one day. At that time, it would be difficult to surpass the people in front. So now was the best time for him to catch up to others. Once he reached the peak of the Meridian Opening Realm, Ling Han did not believe that he would lose to anyone in cultivation. After Sun Jianfang taught him the 3 styles of the square fist, he was waiting for him to ask him if there was anything he didn't understand. However, after waiting for a long time, he still didn't see Ling Han, which made him puzzled. Could it be that this Taoist's comprehension had fallen to rock bottom all of a sudden? After so many days, he still couldn't comprehend some of the 3 styles of the square fist? He called Ling Han over and asked about the progress. "How's your boxing practice?" he asked. "It's all right." Ling Han was very humble. "What do you mean it's all right?" Sun Jianfang was angry, but when he thought about how monstrous Ling Han was, he couldn't help but say, "Show me, no matter how much you've learned." Okay. Ling Han began to practice the 3 styles of the square fist. Sun Jianfang's mouth immediately began to twitch. So this was the reason why Ling Han hadn't come to find him. Damn, he had encountered a monster. He had actually completely learned it. Even with his 100 years of experience in this fist technique, he couldn't find any flaws in Ling Han. Some people were really born for martial arts. He could only think of it this way. He ordered, "Go and cultivate diligently. Don't slack off." Yes, Ling Han left and went back to his residence to cultivate. Young master, Huan Xue ran over. Since Ling Han had moved here, she had followed him and continued to be Ling Han's little maid. This made everyone sigh. At first, they had thought that she was stupid to give up her identity as a disciple of the ancient Tao sect and insist on being a maid. But now, she could also cultivate in a place reserved for Taoists. This made many people envious. "What's wrong?" Ling Han asked with a smile. "Li Zhongdan and He Miaoying's engagement has been cancelled." She revealed a big piece of news. Ling Han gave an "oh" and didn't find it strange. What the He family valued was Li Zhongdan's potential. They believed that she could bring the He family to greater heights in the future. But Li Zhongdan had actually been defeated in the battle for the position of Taoist. This naturally caused the He family to change their minds. However, Ling Han felt that the He family was a bit short-sighted. Although Li Zhongdan had lost the position of Taoist, she was still a talent and had a good future. Of course, if Li Zhongdan didn't know what was good for her and wanted to become enemies with Ling Han, then the only thing that awaited her was death. The He family's decision wasn't wrong. It all depended on what Li Zhongdan chose. How could Li Zhongdan give up? From his point of view, that pendant was too important. He had obtained it after going through a lot of danger, and it had also helped him obtain many opportunities. It was a supreme treasure and was extremely important. As such, he naturally had to find Ling Han to get it back. Ling Han had directly slammed the door in his face. First, he had sent Zheng Tongfeng to lure him into depravity. Then he had provoked the hatred of Tan Gaobua and the others to target him. How could he not compensate with something? This was the Taoist's residence, so who would dare to mess around? Li Zhongdan didn't dare to mess around and could only angrily run back. After this battle, Li Zhongdan's prestige in the ancient Tao sect fell to rock bottom. Now everyone was discussing how long it would take for Ling Han to completely surpass this proud son of heaven. Ling Han knew that Li Zhongdan would most likely have to take a risk. He wouldn't dare to make a move in the ancient Tao sect. And even if he dared to make a move, he wouldn't be able to do it. This was because Ling Han had already buried the 3 formation foundations, and they actually had an effect. He had turned this place into a small illusion formation, but it no longer suppressed his cultivation. This was already enough. Ling Han cultivated every day, practiced his fist techniques, and spent the rest of his time studying formations. In this world, the Tao of Alchemy and the Tao of Formations were tied together. Because he had changed to a better place to cultivate, Ling Han's cultivation speed naturally increased by a lot. 2 months later, he reached the peak of 5 meridians. Next, he easily sensed the 6th meridian. He was once again called over by Sun Jianfang. Sun Jianfang said, "I have a mission for you." "What mission?" "Go to the Jade Dragon Mine and investigate the situation there." "The Jade Dragon Mine?" Sun Jianfang explained to him. And Ling Han found out that the ancient Tao sect had so many jade seeds because they were all mined from the mine. This was the foundation for a sect to continue developing. The Jade Dragon Mine belonged to the ancient Tao sect, and it was on the other side of Sea Level Mountain. Because there were no other factions nearby, there were no experts guarding the mine. However, it had been half a month since the Jade Dragon mine had sent any jade seeds. Chapter 3129. Logically speaking, the Jade Dragon mine would send a batch of jade seeds every 10 days. This was the sect's biggest source of income. Then these jade seeds would be distributed to every disciple. But now, half a month had passed, and the latest batch had yet to arrive. This naturally attracted Sun Jianfang's attention. He had thought that it was only because of the weather, and had been delayed by a day or two. But it had already been 5 days. This wasn't right. Sending Ling Han instead of an elder was to establish Ling Han's prestige as a Dao child. Only by doing more could one's prestige rise and gain the trust of others. This is a talisman soldier. Sun Jianfang handed a yellow, ancient piece of paper to Ling Han. If you really encounter great danger, drip a drop of blood on it and throw it out. Talisman soldier, Ling Han took the yellow paper and was somewhat surprised. There were such things in the Yuan world as well. Powerful beings would attach a portion of their battle power to a tool through special methods and throw it out against an enemy. It could explode with terrifying power. However, it was not triggered by blood, but by divine intent. Sun Jianfang could actually make talisman soldiers? This was passed down from ancient times, and was also found by this old man in the ruins of the ancient Dao sect. Sun Jianfang explained, there aren't many talisman soldiers like this, and because it's been too long, its power should have weakened. It can only unleash attacks of 10 meridians. What did 10 meridians mean? Release of secret power. So this was clearly just a piece of paper, but it could explode with great power. Sun Jianfang still treasured Ling Han a lot, and gave him a talisman soldier of the 10 meridians level. Then even Ling Han should have no problem going to a small mine to investigate. Okay, I'll set off immediately. Ling Han nodded. He was now in the early stage of 6 meridians, but his strength had already reached 17,000 kilograms, comparable to the early stage of 8 meridians. Adding on the demon monkey fist, if he faced Li Zhongdan again, even without the difference in cultivation level, he would barely be able to put up a fight. So with the talisman soldier, he was full of confidence. Go be careful. Sun Jianfang waved his hand. Ling Han returned to his residence and tidied up a little. He rejected the little handmaiden's suggestion to accompany him. He carried his long sword and went down the mountain. With Li Zhongdan's many years of connections, even if his current reputation had fallen greatly, a centipede would not fall even if it died. He definitely could not be underestimated. This guy wouldn't give up such a good opportunity, right? 6 meridians against 9 meridians, and at the peak of 9 meridians at that. Ling Han did not think he had a chance of winning, unless he threw out his seal weapon. However, this was the final move to win by faking external strength. Ling Han thought for a moment, and began to take a roundabout route. He shuttled through the forest, and picked routes that no one used. Now that he had more than 10,000 pounds of strength, it was naturally much easier for him to cross the mountains than before. After spending some effort, 2 days later, he arrived near the Jade Dragon mine. Because of this mine, a village had been built here. The miners usually ate and lived here, and they could only occasionally go back to the town. The miners here were all ordinary people. Only the 13 supervisors were disciples of the ancient Dao sect, and one of them was the leader. He had 8 meridians and was not weak. With him here, even if a fierce tiger came, he would be able to kill it with one punch. When Ling Han arrived at the village, he immediately felt that something was wrong. Even though it was afternoon, and the miners should be working in the mine, there was no sound coming from such a large village. It was as quiet as a ghost village, which naturally made people feel that something was wrong. Where were the people? Since the miners were not here, there had to be someone to cook. Ling Han walked through the village with his long sword in hand. Although he had not mastered any sword techniques, in this situation, it was better to hold a sword. The mountain breeze blew over. The weather was clearly September, but there was a sense of coldness in it. Ling Han's footsteps were very light. He walked from the front of the village to the back of the village, and did not find a single person. He carefully looked around and did not find any signs of fighting. It was as if the people here had run away by themselves, so there was no damage. Otherwise, even if they had encountered a super expert, it would not have been so peaceful. Ling Han started from the back of the village and looked through the houses one by one. Empty, empty, empty. When he was about to reach the front of the village, he finally found a clue in one of the houses. In truth, he didn't know if it was a clue or not, but it was a scale about the size of a fingernail. Just from its shape, it was impossible to tell what animal it came from. The other was a fishy smell. Although it was only a scale, the smell it gave off was extremely heavy. It was also because Ling Han had smelled this fishy odor that he had gone to search for the source of the fishy odor. That was how he had found this piece of scale. Could it be that a ferocious beast had appeared and eaten all the villagers here? Was that possible? There were 13 ancient Tao sect disciples here, and the strongest among them had 8 meridians. What ferocious beast could they not defeat? In fact, not a single one of them had survived. If that was the case, then this ferocious beast had to be at least 9 meridians or even 10 meridians. Ling Han frowned. If such a ferocious beast had really appeared, then if he continued to investigate, it would be a threat to his life. Okay. He heard light footsteps. Were there survivors who had returned? Ling Han walked out of the door. Shwa! A cold glint flashed past and slashed towards his head. This attack was fast and vicious, and it was very powerful. In this strange place, Ling Han would not be careless. He was already prepared to face the danger, so he quickly blocked the attack with his sword. Ding! A crisp sound rang out. He felt his right hand go slightly numb, but he had also blocked this attack. However, just at this moment, another cold light shot toward him. There was more than one person attacking. Ling Han's feet slipped, and he dodged this attack. His whole body was aching slightly. After a clash of blows, in a situation where his power was boiling, he was still able to barely make such a change. This was really too much of a stretch. However, a third attack came. Ling Han had used up all his strength, and his body couldn't change, so how could he block this attack? Nothing was impossible. Ling Han activated the Monkey King's cultivation method, and the power in his meridians surged, providing him with endless power. He somersaulted and finally dodged the third attack. There was no fourth attack. 3 people appeared in front of Ling Han: Rui Yuanliang, Yang Fei, and Li Zhongdan. The 3 of them had actually joined hands. Ling Han thought about it. Yang Fei and Rui Yuanliang had been humiliated by him during the Tao disciple selection, and Li Zhongdan had lost his position as a Tao disciple, so he couldn't become the He family's son-in-law. As a result, the 3 of them had hit it off. This Li Zhongdan was really careful. He was clearly at 9 meridians, but he didn't act alone. It was more refreshing to read on his phone. Chapter 3130. A Beautiful Romance. Li Zhongdan and the other 2 were also very surprised. They had ambushed, outnumbered, and had the advantage of cultivation, but they had not been able to kill Ling Han. What kind of luck did this kid have? You really are lucky, Rui Yuanliang said darkly. Don't waste words with him. Kill him. Yang Fei's eyes shone with a cold light. He really hated Ling Han to death. He had made him expose himself in public, and now he didn't dare show his face in public. Ling Han shook his head. You really are scheming. You followed me all the way here. Ling Han, today will be the day of your death. This place will be your burial ground. Rui Yuanliang laughed coldly and took the initiative to attack. He brandished a large saber that gleamed with a cold light and slashed at Ling Han's neck. The power of his 8 meridians boiled. His battle ability was not weak. Yang Fei also brandished his sword and slashed at Ling Han. Li Zhongdan did not act. He was like a treacherous viper, waiting for the best chance to attack. His caution was reasonable. Otherwise, Ling Han would have directly taken out that seal soldier. With the power of 10 meridians exploding, even if the 3 worked together, so what? They might be killed in an instant. Ling Han also brandished his long sword. Ding ding ding. He exchanged blows with Rui Yuanliang and Yang Fei. His current strength was not much weaker than Rui Yuanliang's. Compared to Yang Fei, he was actually stronger. Therefore, He was not at much of a disadvantage in a 1 versus 2 fight. However, he had not reached 10 meridians yet, and could not release his power outwards. His weapon could not be used to attack at close range. Therefore, the power of the demon monkey fist could not be used. Otherwise, his left hand could supplement the demon monkey fist, and his battle ability would naturally be even stronger. Even so, this was enough to shock people. During the qualifiers, Ling Han had relied on the suppression of the ancient formation to defeat Yang Fei and Rui Yuanliang. But now, without the slightest suppression of his cultivation, he was only at a slight disadvantage when fighting 1 against 2. He was simply monstrous. Li Zhangdan's expression turned ugly. Although it was easy to cultivate in a lower realm, it was not as easy as Ling Han. In just a few short months, he had reached a height that others could only reach in a few years. He was hesitating whether he should make a move or not. "Senior brother Li, what are you hesitating for?" Yang Fei shouted. "Let's attack together and get rid of this guy." "Li Zhangdan, this was your idea. Why are you hesitating now that things have come to this?" Rui Yuanliang asked. If it were not for Li Zhangdan's powerful suppression, he and Yang Fei would not have been able to kill Ling Han at all. "If you can't beat him, can't you run?" Li Zhangdan was different from these two. He had almost become a Taoist, so he naturally had a better understanding of martial art. Sun Jianfeng had many secret treasures in his hands. This time he sent Ling Han out alone. Would he give him 1 or 2 to defend himself? In any case, he didn't believe it. That was why he was worried that if he couldn't kill Ling Han, then if Ling Han used his secret treasure, there would be unpredictable consequences. If Ling Han was allowed to escape back to the sect, then he would be accused of murdering a Taoist. That would be a dead end for him. That was why he could either kill Ling Han today, or he would have to roam the world. There was no other way. He had to fight, or the glory that belonged to him would never return. "All right." Li Zhangdan nodded, but took a few steps back. He picked up a palm-sized rock from the ground and threw it at Ling Han. Force could not be released, but power could be thrown out through a weapon. Xiao, the strength of a peak 9 meridians practitioner, was as high as 15,000 jin. Adding that Li Zhangdan was stronger than the average 9 meridians practitioner, his strength reached 35,000 jin. When this was added to the power of a rock and thrown, how terrifying was its destructive power. Even if he couldn't use it perfectly, it was still more than 10,000 jin. This power far surpassed Ling Han's limits. If he was hit by it, then Ling Han would definitely be sent flying. Ling Han dodged to the side, avoiding the rock's attack. But in order to avoid this attack, he was almost cut by Rui Yuanliang's broadsword, and broke out in a cold sweat. The attack of a 9 meridians practitioner was no joke. Although Rui Yuanliang and Yang Fei were very dissatisfied with Li Zhangdan's actions, this seriously affected Ling Han, so they didn't say anything. As long as they could kill Ling Han, then so be it. "Xiao xiao xiao." Li Zhangdan continuously threw rocks. His aim was exceptionally accurate, forcing Ling Han to divert most of his attention to dispel them. He also had to dodge, and couldn't use his weapon to meet the attacks. The difference in strength was too great, and one blow could cause his longsword to fly out of his hand. But in this way, Rui Yuanliang's power suddenly increased, and even Yang Fei's attacks could not be ignored. This was not a solution. Ling Han's brow furrowed slightly. Did he have to immediately use the seal soldier? The problem was the seal soldier could not be used for long. Now that Li Zhangdan was throwing rocks on the periphery, it was too easy to escape. At that time, he only had to wait for the seal soldier's energy to be used up, and then he could come back. At that time, Ling Han would really have no way to deal with it. Xiao, another rock smashed over, whistling through the air. This speed was too fast, close to the speed of sound, and gave off a sonic boom. As it passed, the sound compressed and became tangible. "Go!" With a long howl, Ling Han suddenly charged out of the fray, running with all his strength. "Where do you think you're going?" Yang Fei and Rui Yuanliang both gave chase, and although Li Zhangdan also gave chase, he still maintained a distance. Xiao, a rock smashed over, catching up to Ling Han at subsonic speed, directly attacking his back. Ling Han dodged to the side, avoiding this attack, but because of this delay, Yang Fei and Rui Yuanliang had already caught up and began a fierce attack on him. Fuck. Ling Han cursed inwardly, but there was no other way. 9 meridians was too strong, and he was not a match for Li Zhongdan alone. This result was very normal. There was no other way. He had not learned ancient formations. Otherwise he could set up a large formation now and pull everyone's cultivation to the same level, even if the 3 of them joined forces. So what? Ling Han continued to run, fighting in such an open area. The threat of Li Zhongdan's rock-throwing attacks was too great. Furthermore, this place seemed to be a natural armory. Rocks were everywhere, so there was absolutely no need to worry that there would be no rocks to use. Soon, a pitch-black cave appeared in front of Ling Han, exuding a sinister aura, as if once entered, there would be no coming out. This was the entrance to the Jade Dragon mine. Ling Han gritted his teeth and ran into the cave. In the mine, the power of Li Zhongdan's rock throwing would be severely limited. Not to mention anything else, with the dim light, how could his accuracy be so accurate? Stop him! Li Zhongdan shouted. But Rui Yuanliang and Yang Fei were not faster than Ling Han. How could he stop them? Li Zhongdan had no choice but to explode with power. Pung! His speed suddenly soared to the limit, and layers of sound barriers appeared behind him, quickly closing the distance between him and Ling Han. Ling Han chuckled and flashed the seal soldier. Li Zhongdan immediately stopped. Chapter 31-32. Li Zhongdan's sudden stop caused him to break away from Rui Yuanliang and Yang Fei. Ling Han charged out and clashed with the 2 of them. Ding ding ding. Their weapons collided, but he did not linger and charged between them. Rui Yuanliang and Yang Fei were startled. Damn! Why did Li Zhongdan do this again? However, Ling Han was sandwiched between the 3 of them, so he had walked right into their trap. Good. Rui Yuanliang and Yang Fei both turned around and charged at Ling Han once more. Li Zhongdan was still hesitating whether or not he should make a move, but his expression suddenly changed greatly, because he saw a scarlet lizard moving its 4 short legs, but its speed was indescribably fast, and it was currently quickly approaching. Pooh! The lizard stuck out its tongue like a spear and pierced through Yang Fei's back. Then it pierced through his chest, causing blood to spurt out. Yang Fei only struggled for a bit before his limbs fell, and his head tilted to the side. Rui Yuanliang was the closest, so he naturally witnessed this scene. He could not help but break out in cold sweat. Yang Fei's cultivation was only 1 meridian lower than his, but he did not even have the ability to fight back against this lizard, and was instantly killed. Just how dangerous was it for him to be so close to this lizard? He was so scared that he lost all other thoughts and charged at full speed toward Ling Han. As long as he ran faster than Ling Han, then Ling Han would be the lizard's first target, and he would have a chance to escape. Li Zhongdan let out a sigh of relief. From the moment this lizard attacked, he could tell that this beast's cultivation was at least 9 meridians, so he was not afraid at all. Although he felt it was strange that a demonic beast would appear within the ancient Dao sect's territory and reach 9 meridians, he did not have time to think too much about it. He immediately threw out a rock. He wanted to stop Ling Han, so that the lizard would be the main force to kill Ling Han. He only needed to land the killing blow. Whoosh! A rock shot out at a subsonic speed with terrifying power. Ling Han did not dare to take it head-on. His figure swayed and he dodged the attack. Rui Yuanliang was overjoyed. With Li Zhongdan's obstruction, Ling Han was forced to stop, giving him a chance to overtake him. In order to make sure that Ling Han would be the last, he even swung his saber at Ling Han's head. As long as Ling Han could withstand this attack, he would be able to completely surpass Ling Han. Ling Han snorted and raised his right hand. The sword in his hand shot towards Rui Yuanliang. As a man who had gone through countless trials and tribulations to become a supreme being, his battle comprehension was naturally incomparably shocking, and he was also incomparably decisive. If it were Rui Yuanliang, he would definitely not give up the weapon in his hand. This was the difference between a genius and a mediocre person. Rui Yuanliang was helpless. The distance was too close for him to dodge. He could only use the saber in his hand to block the sword. Ding! With a crisp sound, the sword was indeed blocked by him. However, he had also lost the chance to stop Ling Han's advance. Whoosh! Just at this moment, the blood-colored lizard attacked again. Its tongue flicked out like a spear, and its target was Rui Yuanliang. Rui Yuanliang was shocked, and he hurriedly swung his saber to fight the blood-colored lizard. Pung pung pung. The blood-colored lizard's tongue was incomparably hard. It could actually take a sharp blade head-on without breaking. Moreover, this tongue was extremely nimble. After colliding with the saber, it could immediately become incomparably soft, turning into a whip that continued lashing at Rui Yuanliang. In just a few moves, Rui Yuanliang was flustered. He had never encountered such an opponent before. Its attack method was strange, and it had the advantage of strength. He estimated that he could only last 10 moves at most before he would definitely end up like Yang Fei, having his heart pierced by that spear-like tongue. Li Zhongdan, save me. Hurry and save me. He roared. He naturally did not want to die. Li Zhongdan hesitated but did not act. If he went to save Rui Yuanliang, then he would have to fight the blood-colored lizard, and Ling Han would be able to take the opportunity to escape. How could he do that? If Rui Yuanliang died, then so be it. He was someone who had been abandoned by the Qi family. Other than having 8 meridians, what use was he? And as long as Rui Yuanliang died, the blood-colored lizard's target would be Ling Han. Under the powerful attacks of 9 meridians, Ling Han would either die or use up that seal soldier. Then if he attacked again, only death awaited Ling Han. Rui Yuanliang, make a sacrifice. Swoosh! Li Zhongdan threw out another stone. He only wanted to slow down Ling Han's advance. Damn it! Ling Han cursed inside, but facing this attack, he had no choice but to dodge. Li Zhongdan, even if I become a ghost, I won't let you off. Rui Yuanliang roared. He really could not hold on. Under the suppression of 1 meridian, and the attacks of the blood-colored lizard were so crafty and strange, he was unable to withstand them. Pfft! A flower of blood suddenly exploded from his chest, and a long tongue pierced out. His eyes stared fixedly at Li Zhongdan. He could have saved him, but he did not. He was naturally filled with resentment towards Li Zhongdan, and died with his eyes wide open. Ling Han noticed that there were many barbs on the lizard's tongue. This attack was not only fatal, but it had also sucked all the blood from Rui Yuanliang's heart. Otherwise, there would not be so little blood splattering out. Before he had a second thought, the blood-colored lizard once again attacked. This time, the target was naturally him. Ling Han blocked it. He used the demon monkey fist. Immediately, a primitive and tyrannical presence circulated, its power astounding. It was this fist technique again. Li Zhongdan saw it all. He had been defeated by this fist technique in the ancient formation. Otherwise, with his advantage in power, how could he have lost to Ling Han? He watched intently, and could not help but be moved. Ling Han's power was clearly much inferior, but he had relied on this fist technique to endure so many moves. It was truly inconceivable. He was filled with greed. The might of this set of fist technique was far above that of square fist, and the more profound the fist technique was, the faster the cultivation speed would be. He believed that Ling Han had definitely relied on this set of fist technique to advance his cultivation level so quickly. Perhaps Ling Han had hidden a fist technique manual on him? He started to put his attention on the blood-colored lizard. Ling Han was destined to die, so it was inevitable that he would have to fight this demonic beast. At the very least, he would have to snatch Ling Han's corpse. Therefore, he had to understand this blood-colored lizard's attack method. Ling Han's brows furrowed slightly. Although he was doing his best to resist, the difference in power was too great. Moreover, this demonic beast's tongue was like a treasured weapon. It could be soft or hard, and it was really too difficult to parry. If this continued, he would at most be able to resist 50 moves. He could only use his ultimate move. Ling Han sighed. He had not thought that he would have to use that talisman soldier so soon. But there was no other way. If he did not use it, could it be that he would have to keep it to accompany him in death? He raised his hand, and a yellow talisman paper was already shot out. Shwa, golden light flashed, and endless brilliance flowed out. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 31-33. A Beautiful Romance. The seal soldier attacked. Light flowed and turned into a golden human body. It seemed to be made from gold and flashed with blinding light. Ling Han could faintly feel that he had a thread of connection with this human body. He could send his thoughts and tell it to attack whoever it wanted. This was because the seal paper had his blood on it, so the seal soldier it had turned into had a connection with his spirit. Bam! The golden seal soldier attacked and met the blood-colored lizard. This was at the level of 10 meridians. Not only was it stronger, but it could also release its force. Without even hitting it head-on, the blood-colored lizard was sent flying. This was slightly inconceivable. The blood-colored lizard was clearly just 1 meridian weaker, but it looked like it did not have the ability to fight back. Xiao, the blood-colored lizard spat out its long tongue, turned it into a spear, and attacked again. Its defense was slightly astounding. It was not injured after taking this blow. The gold seal soldier formed a fist. Bam! It punched again. The attack of the long tongue was immediately stopped, and then it bounced back, turning soft. Fortunately, this tongue could be hard or soft. Otherwise, it would have been broken by this punch. Bam, bam, bam. The gold seal soldier attacked proactively and repeatedly attacked the blood-colored lizard. Li Zhongdan gave a cold smile. As expected, he was right not to charge. Otherwise, facing a 10 meridian warrior, he would be killed in a few blows. He did not have such a strong defense that could endure the attacks of a 10 meridian warrior. Why was it said that 10 meridians could be called kings? It was because they had an absolute advantage against martial artists of 9 meridians and below. But of course he would not just stand and watch. Xiao, he threw out a rock, targeting Ling Han. Bam! The gold seal soldier punched from a distance, and this rock immediately exploded to pieces. At the same time, his left fist smashed towards the blood-colored lizard. Fighting 1 against 2, he still had the absolute advantage. Ling Han sighed. This Li Zhongdan was really careful. He had been maintaining the distance and had not come close. If he controlled the gold seal soldier to pursue, then before the gold seal soldier could catch up, he would be killed by the blood-colored lizard. Therefore, he had to deal with this lizard first. This fierce creature was truly powerful. Its skin was thick and sturdy, and it was not greatly affected even after taking a series of 10 meridian attacks. It was only that many of its scales had fallen off. However, it had to be said that if a human were to take so many attacks, their internal organs would have long since been smashed into mush. It was no wonder that demonic beasts occupied this world, and the human race could only live on in some small areas. Indeed, in a battle of the same level, the demonic beasts had a great advantage. However, right now, the blood-colored lizard could only take a beating. A 10 meridian king could release its power, so it didn't even have a chance to get close. No matter how strong its body was, it couldn't withstand this kind of torture. It was really savage, not retreating even in this situation. It seemed like it wanted to endure until the seal soldier's energy was used up, and then swallow Ling Han alive. Fuck, was there a need for that? Ling Han was speechless. In his view, the ideal situation was for the gold seal soldier to force the blood-colored lizard away, and then seriously injure Li Zhongdan. Then he would have the initiative. Ha ha ha. Li Zhongdan laughed loudly. He was still throwing rocks, forcing the gold seal soldier to use a portion of its power to resolve the rocks and reduce the pressure on the blood-colored lizard. If the blood-colored lizard could last until the seal soldier's power was used up, then he could successfully clean up the mess. He believed that at that time, the large lizard would be covered in wounds and unable to withstand a blow. But how could a king be so easy to deal with? As expected, under the fierce attacks of the gold seal soldier, the blood-colored lizard was quickly covered in blood. Its blood was so smelly that Ling Han couldn't help but cover his nose, as though he would be poisoned if he smelled too much. The large lizard was afraid to fight. Its greed for food could not defeat its survival instincts. It started to retreat. You still want to run now? Ling Han was also angry. He controlled the gold seal soldier to give chase. If the blood-colored lizard had fled earlier, then there might have been a slight chance because the terrain of the mine was complex. If Ling Han caught up, the threat of the gold seal soldier would naturally disappear. But right now, its wounds were too heavy, and it continued to bleed as it walked. How could it escape the pursuit of the gold seal soldier in this state? In a few steps it caught up. Bam bam bam, angry fists rained down, and its scales were shattered. The gold seal soldier suddenly used a great move. It was already flashing, and now it was even more dazzling. Then it punched and created a ball of golden light that was like a burning flame. This attack was extremely terrifying. It could be seen that the shattered rocks on the ground flew up and floated in the air, as though they were in a state of weightlessness. As this ball of golden light shot out, the shattered rocks also shot out. Shio shio shio, it was as though countless rocks were shot out in unison. When the golden light hit, the blood-colored lizard couldn't help but howl. Then its limbs softened, and it was unable to move. It was naturally unable to dodge the shattered rocks that followed, and was immediately turned into a sieve. The main reason was that its scales were almost all gone, and its defensive power was greatly reduced. Adding on that this was another great move, it directly turned this vicious creature into dust. It was finally done. Ling Han turned around. Correspondingly, the gold seal soldier also turned around and faced Li Zhongdan. Li Zhongdan was unruffled. Shitty, how much longer can this seal soldier of yours last? As expected, this guy knew about seal soldiers. No wonder he had been so timid before. But if this kind of secret weapon was not used, it would be even more intimidating. Now that it was taken out, the trump card was shown, and people would have a way to deal with it. Ling Han snorted. What do you think? With a thought, the gold seal soldier immediately charged at Li Zhongdan. Ling Han also moved. He felt that he had to be within a certain range of the gold seal soldier. Otherwise, their mental connection would be broken, and he would not be able to control the seal soldier. Li Zhongdan laughed and his figure quickly retreated. His speed was not as fast as the gold seal soldier, but that was fine as long as he was not slower than Ling Han. The gold seal soldier could not leave the range of Ling Han's command. Due to this, he could move easily. In just a while, Ling Han found that the light on the seal soldier was slightly dim. His power was about to be used up. He did not hesitate and suddenly turned to run. After the battle with the blood-colored lizard, Ling Han knew that he was not a match for a 9 meridians expert, especially someone like Li Zhongdan who was stronger than ordinary peak of 9 meridians. As expected, the gold seal soldier only punched once more before its body became dim. In the end, it turned to a ray of light and disappeared. Shitty Ling, you should return what you owe me. Li Zhongdan turned around and chased after Ling Han. Catch up to me first. Ling Han was in a hurry. Don't say it so ambiguously, people will misunderstand, Li Zhongdan said with a smile. At this moment he recovered all of his confidence. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 31-34. Falling in Love with You. Divine Tao Alchemy Venerable's latest chapter. Ling Han sprinted all the way. The terrain of this mine was complicated, and he would encounter a fork before long. This greatly reduced the threat of Li Zhongdan's stone throwing, but it still couldn't be ignored. It couldn't be helped. There were still sparse lights in the mine providing light. It didn't affect Li Zhongdan's accuracy too much. Ling Han clenched his teeth and ran in the direction he had come from. Soon, darkness appeared in front of him. It was deep and unfathomable. Ling Han didn't hesitate and immediately threw himself into it. Li Zhongdan frowned. In such a dark environment, he could only throw stones randomly. Moreover, what if he was ambushed? He couldn't detect it at all. But he also made up his mind in an instant. He didn't slow down in the slightest. It didn't matter. Ling Han was in front of him. If there really was a beast ambushing him, it would attack Ling Han first. He was just like a stone to scout the way. Junior brother Ling, why are you running so fast? Let's have a good chat, he said calmly, feeling that everything was in his control. Hypocrite, have you forgotten that I beat you to tears? You still have the face to pretend in front of me? Ling Han sneered. Li Zhongdan's expression changed when he heard this. The battle with Ling Han in the ancient formation was his most humiliating experience. He had been kicked in the balls twice. When he went back for a checkup, the doctor said that one of them was cracked. This was also another reason why the He family canceled the wedding. They couldn't even guarantee whether they could have a next generation. What use was there in having a son-in-law like this? All of this was because of Ling Han. You bastard, when you fall into my hands, I won't kill you so easily. I'll peel off your skin first. Li Zhongdan said coldly. But don't worry, you won't die. I'll give you a life-saving medicine, and let you see and feel everything with your own eyes. Then I'll break every bone in your body. Finally, I'll cut you off bit by bit until you take your last breath. Ling Han laughed coldly. Under the hypocrisy of this modest gentleman, there was indeed a perverted heart. He didn't say anything else, and just kept running. This passage was very long, and there were no turns. Otherwise, in such a dark environment, even if there was a wall in front of him, Ling Han wouldn't be able to stop. After running for more than 2 hours, Ling Han felt the blood in his body boiling. It was extremely uncomfortable, and his legs felt like they were about to explode. After maintaining such a high speed for so long, his body had already reached its limit. At this moment, a small bright spot appeared in front of them. There's an exit. Ling Han struggled to hold on and continued running. The bright spot grew bigger and bigger. It was indeed an exit. For a moment, Ling Han didn't have the time to think about why an exit had appeared when he was clearly running underground. It would be best if there was a big river outside the exit, so that he could escape from Li Zhongdan's pursuit. After a few more minutes, the exit was already in sight. Don't even think about it. Li Zhongdan had already closed in. Before, because the environment was too dark, he was afraid that there might be an ambush here. So he didn't run at full speed. But now that the exit was in front of him, he was also afraid that something might happen. So he burst out with speed. He had already caught up. He stretched out his right hand, which turned into a claw, and grabbed at the back of Ling Han's heart. Ling Han didn't parry, but activated the Monkey King's cultivation method. Instantly, he was like a dry spring that had been reborn. Suddenly, there was an endless surge of power, and in an instant, his speed skyrocketed. He suddenly accelerated, shook off Li Zhongdan's attack, and rushed out in a flash. Where do you think you're going? Li Zhongdan chased. He had already lost all patience. Puff! Just as Ling Han rushed out, he suddenly felt a terrible murderous intent. At this moment, there was a purple light surging out of his chest, and the murderous intent was somewhat weakened. Even so, he still spat out a mouthful of blood. Pa! He could no longer run, and directly fell to the ground. Ling! Li Zhongdan chased out, and seeing Ling Han lying on the ground, he was naturally overjoyed. Just as he was about to catch up and capture him, an incredibly fierce murderous intent attacked, and he was caught off guard. Instantly, both of his legs were severed at the knees. Pung! He also fell to the ground, and blood flowed like a fountain. He screamed in pain. His face was filled with fear and disbelief. A genius like him had an incredibly bright future, but now he was crippled. How could he accept this? How could he not be terrified? Even with his deep shrewdness, he now had a mental breakdown. Ling Han crawled up with difficulty. He looked down, and the pendant hanging on his chest was emitting a faint purple light, propping up an area. Obviously, he had only fallen because of the protection of this pendant. Looking at Li Zhongdan's pitiful state, it was obvious what the result of rashly entering this place would be. Could this be counted as his luck? Ling Han scratched his head. He had not run in any other direction, and there were countless forks in the road. He had come here, as if there was a hand controlling him. Only now did he have the mood to look around. To his surprise, this was a group of buildings. There were many ancient-looking houses and pavilions, and the style of the buildings was very similar to the ancient Tao sect. Each house gave off a faint light. Although it was not very bright, with so many of them in the darkness, it was very eye-catching. Aside from these buildings, there were many different kinds of trees, but only one of them bore fruit. It was very short, only about 5 feet tall, and there were 3 red fruits on it. As for the other trees, let alone bearing fruit, they did not even have any leaves. It was as if they had been dead for hundreds of years. So fragrant. Ling Han smelled the fragrance of the fruit, and just smelling it caused the power in his body to become restless. That is a treasure tree, Ling Han exclaimed in his heart, and a look of joy appeared on his face. If it was already like this just by smelling it, then if he ate it, his cultivation would definitely rise greatly. It would be much stronger than that precious tree in the Monkey Valley. However, Ling Han's gaze swept around. Although this place looked peaceful, he knew that there was danger at every step. Formation he had rashly charged in, and triggered the attack of the formation. Fortunately, the pendant on his neck had worked, so he had only coughed up a bit of blood. Otherwise, he would have had his arms and legs broken. He looked at Li Zhongdan, who was still howling in pain. Fate was really playing tricks on people. This pendant originally belonged to Li Zhongdan, but he had provoked Ling Han. Otherwise, how could there be such a calamity? This is called fate. Ling Han sighed, but he did not know how much damage these words had on Li Zhongdan. Since the pendant could suppress the formation to a certain extent, could it allow him to get close to the fruit tree, pick the fruit, and then enter the houses to see if there were any ancient books left behind? This must be something left behind by the previous civilization. Ling Han got up and began to calculate. Reading a refreshing novel was enough. Reading on the phone was even more refreshing. Chapter 31-36. Compared to the increase in strength, what was a little bit of pain? Had Ling Han ever lacked this kind of training along the way? The second fruit entered his stomach. Boom! The terrifying energy once again transformed into a huge wave, wreaking havoc in his body. Ling Han held fast to his heart and used the Monkey King's method to guide it. Middle stage, late stage, peak stage. It was a crucial moment again. Ling Han sensed the 8th meridian. His body trembled slightly, and he had already crossed over. Ugh! He still spat out a mouthful of blood. Under the frenzied energy, the 8th meridian was opened in an incomparably violent manner. Naturally, it caused his internal organs to riot. However, the power of the precious fruit was also used up. The first fruit had pushed Ling Han's cultivation level to a whole new level, but if it was the second fruit, it would be slightly weaker than the previous level. There was no helping it. The energy needed for 8 meridians would definitely far exceed that of 7 meridians. Ling Han looked at the last fruit. Could this help him break through to 9 meridians? He plucked the last fruit without hesitation and ate it. Boom! A third tsunami appeared in his body. Middle stage, late stage, peak stage. At this time, the energy tide had already calmed down and was no longer as turbulent. Then it immediately turned to calm. It was just a little bit off. Ling Han felt that it was a pity. If this fruit still had that little bit of power, he would be able to go with the flow, sense the 9th meridian, and advance to 9 meridians in one go. He started, because he sensed that there was energy drifting around him. It had been almost zero before, but now it was boiling. Ling Han suddenly realized that it was time for the sun to rise. Good. He continued to use the Monkey King's method, drawing upon the mystical power of heaven and earth around him, to open the 9th meridian in his body. 10 minutes later, Ling Han's body shook. The 9th meridian had already been opened. Energy flowed in like a trickle, filling this meridian. 9 meridians formed. Now his progress was extremely slow. After all, he was only drawing upon the power of heaven and earth. Unlike the precious fruit, the precious tree took root and absorbed who knew how much mystical power of heaven and earth, condensing in the fruit. Suddenly exploding out, of course, was incomparably fast. However, true cultivation was accumulated over a long period of time. Could it be that there were treasured fruits to eat every day? Half an hour later, Ling Han stopped. He could no longer sense the mystical power between heaven and earth. Naturally, he could no longer cultivate. He stood up and swept his gaze across the surrounding houses. He wanted to explore. There might be medicinal pills left behind from ancient times. If he took them one by one, would they be able to directly send him to the upper 12 meridians? It didn't matter if he advanced too quickly. He could calm down and carefully temper his body when he was at the 12th meridian. Once he was incomparably stable, he could charge into the next great realm. Although he didn't know what the next great realm was, he believed that there must be one. He took a few steps forward. He was only 4 to 5 feet away from the nearest house, but an incomparably alarming omen suddenly rose in his heart. If he took another step forward, he would die. Based on his previous experience in researching formations, His expression couldn't help but change. The power of this formation increased as it got closer to the house. So, if he had only been slashed to the point of vomiting blood before, then the next attack might have directly cut him in half. With his current strength and attainment in formations, it was too much of a stretch. Ling Han nodded. He could only give up now. When his strength was much stronger, or his attainment in formations had increased, he would come back and try again. He turned around and looked towards the exit. Li Zhongdan was still sitting there with the sword in his hand. His gaze was incomparably fierce. His 2 calves had been cut off. This naturally hurt his heart. And what supported Li Zhongdan to wait for so long was naturally his hatred towards Ling Han. He wanted revenge, revenge, revenge. Seeing that Ling Han was finally walking towards him, Li Zhongdan revealed a cold smile. You're finally so thirsty that you want to go out, right? What can 3 fruits do? Can they quench your thirst? Can they quench your hunger? Come die. Ling Han walked over. He had already seen through the formations in this area. Therefore he walked easily and calmly, as if he was walking on flat ground. Soon, he was less than 6 feet away from Li Zhongdan. However, he couldn't release his force. Even if he was this close, Li Zhongdan didn't dare to act recklessly. In front of him was the formation area, and there was a terrifying danger. You've been guarding here. I believe you're not going to escort me back to the sect, are you? Ling Han smiled. Li Zhongdan suppressed his anger and said indifferently, No. You want to kill me so badly? Yes. Can you? Of course. Ling Han nodded and walked towards Li Zhongdan. Then come and try. Swoosh, a sword light flashed. Li Zhongdan struck out and stabbed at Ling Han's chest. He actually wanted to stab Ling Han's throat, but because his legs were broken, he didn't have enough height. Therefore, he could only stab at Ling Han's chest. Ling Han punched out to meet the longsword. Li Zhongdan couldn't help but sneer. Did this brat think that just because his legs were crippled, his strength was also crippled? Fine, I'll break this guy's arms first. But just as the sword was about to collide with Ling Han's fist, Ling Han's arm inconceivably twisted and turned into a fist, striking at the blade of his sword. Pung, the fist struck out, and there was a huge shockwave. The long sword was tilted to one side, and naturally, it lost its aim and couldn't stab anything. Li Zhongdan felt a pain in his hand, and the sword almost slipped out of his hand. He couldn't help but be shocked. Just how much strength was needed? You. He looked at Ling Han in shock, and felt his mind in a mess. Ling Han smiled indifferently. Without enough strength, how would I dare to ask for guidance from senior brother Li? It's those 3 treasured fruits. Li Zhongdan understood. Ling Han had eaten those 3 fruits before. They must have been too precious, and that had allowed this guy's strength to increase by leaps and bounds. That's a good guess. Ling Han bumped his fists together. Li Zhongdan, I don't think I've ever provoked you, but you first sent Zheng Tongfeng to lure me to the casino, and then had Rui Yuanliang and the others frame me, all because I might threaten your status as a Dao child. Isn't that enough? Li Zhongdan said through gritted teeth, his face full of malevolence. Ling Han shook his head. Your view is really pitifully small. The world is so big, and as long as you have strength, you can rise up anywhere. Then why do you want to steal my position as a Dao child? Li Zhongdan roared. Steal your position? Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. Had this position been reserved for Li Zhongdan? Forget it, this kind of person was extremely egoistic. What was there to say? Kill. Ling Han attacked, using the demon monkey fist with boundless power. Li Zhongdan couldn't move, so he slapped the ground with one hand to jolt his body up, and then adjusted his position. But in the end, he wasn't nimble enough, and Ling Han quickly closed in on him. In 2 or 3 moves, the long sword in his hand was sent flying. Pooh! Ling Han followed up with another punch, which landed on Li Zhongdan's chest. Immediately, a clear hole appeared. Chapter 31-37. Li Zhongdan was dumbfounded. He looked down at his chest, and then at Ling Han. He could no longer feel the pain. He wanted to speak, but he couldn't open his mouth at all. His body slowly slid down and landed on the ground. His eyes were wide open and refused to close. Ling Han searched Li Zhongdan's body, and very quickly found the box that contained the jade-colored toad. However, he did not know what it was, but since it was kept by Li Zhongdan like this, it should be something good. He hid and left the place. The crisis for Li Zhongdan's group had been resolved, but he still hadn't found out why all the miners had disappeared. Indeed, he had found a 9-meridian lizard, and it was very likely that it had eaten all the miners. However, the problem was, how could a 9-meridian monster silently appear within the ancient Tao sect's territory? Every year, the disciples of the sect would carry out a large-scale search in the mountains. As long as it was not a place suppressed by the formation, they would search it. Therefore, it was almost impossible for any demonic beasts to take root here and grow stronger. That might not be the case. For example, no one had found Brother Monkey. Ling Han thought, should I go back and report the situation, or should I take a look and find out more? I'm already at the early stage of 9 meridians. My strength is probably over 50,000 kilograms, which is comparable to 10 meridians. The only difference is that I can't release my strength. Ling Han pondered. So, even if I meet another lizard now, I'll be the one to trample it. Okay, let's look around again. Ling Han searched the mine, and after a long time, he found another pitch-black hole. He temporarily removed a lamp from the wall of the cave and shone it. He found that the marks at the entrance of the cave were very new, as it had not been dug long ago. However, when he walked in, he found that the walls of the cave were covered with moss. What did this mean? This hole had existed for a long time, but it had just been dug out recently. So smelly, a gust of wind suddenly blew out from the hole. It carried a strong stench, causing Ling Han to cover his nose. Was this the nest of the blood-colored lizard? Ling Han walked forward very slowly. His footsteps were almost inaudible. At the same time, he turned off the light in his hand. After walking for a few steps, the stench became stronger and stronger. Ling Han turned on the lamp again, and then threw it forward. The lights crossed the curve, illuminating the scenery along the way. Ling Han immediately revealed a disgusted expression. He saw many large and small blood-colored lizards eating, and their food was dead bodies. Although it was only a glimpse, Ling Han was sure that those people were the missing miners. Their clothes matched the description. Pung, the lamp fell to the ground and rolled a few times. Surprisingly, it was not broken and was still emitting light. The lizards that were eating immediately crawled toward the lamp. They swung their 4 short legs at an astonishing speed. However, these crawlers did not seem to have developed intelligence. They attacked the lamp and bit it. Soon, the lamp was destroyed, and the scene returned to darkness. Ling Han saw clearly that these lizards were not as big as the first one. Logically speaking, they should not be as strong as the first one. He did not rush out rashly because there were too many lizards, and the environment was too dark. He was not like these crawlers who had adapted to the dark environment and could see things. Ling Han retreated and took a few lamps. Then, he returned and placed them on the ground one by one. Then, he picked up the gravel on the ground and threw it forward. Pa pa pa. The stones carried at least 30,000 kilograms of force, and they were all smashed out at subsonic speed. The destructive power was incomparably terrifying. When they hit the walls of the cave, sparks flew, and when they hit the lizards, blood immediately spurted out. This immediately angered the group of lizards. In an instant, dozens of large and small lizards all rushed over. Ling Han continued to throw rocks. His current strength was too terrifying, and when these lizards rushed into the area of light, his accuracy had also greatly improved. Although he couldn't hit the target 100% of the time, he could still hit the target 50% of the time. Pung pung pung. The lizards were smashed away one after another. The scales on their bodies were scattered, and they looked very miserable. However, Ling Han was only one person after all. Naturally, he could not stop all the lizards. Soon 5 lizards got close to him. Ling Han stopped throwing stones. Instead, he used the square fist. Go! He shouted softly, and a vigorous strength burst out. This was a super weight of up to 50,000 kilograms, which was far more terrifying than throwing stones. Pung, as he threw a punch, a lizard was directly smashed into pieces. This showed how terrifying his strength was at the moment. Ling Han raised his leg again and gave a flying kick. Although he hadn't practiced any foot techniques, the power was there for all to see. His kick was still as heavy as 40,000 kilograms, and he kicked another lizard to death. Come, come, come. Ling Han laughed. He had advanced 3 levels in a row. In terms of strength, he did not lose to 10 Meridian Kings at all. These lizards were only 7 meridians or 8 meridians. How could they be a match for him? This was because Ling Han could not release his strength. Otherwise, these lizards would not even be qualified to get close to him. They would be crushed by his violent strength at a certain distance. What surprised Ling Han was that these lizards were extremely ferocious. They clearly saw their companions being killed, but they still continued to charge forward. However, under the suppression of absolute strength, this was naturally just sending them to their deaths. Very soon, these lizards were all killed by Ling Han, and the clothes on his body were also torn in a few places, leaving behind a few wounds. They did not penetrate deep into his flesh, but they were black. As expected, they were poisonous. Ling Han hurriedly sat down and began to circulate the Monkey King's cultivation technique. After circulating it a few times, black liquid began to seep out of the wounds, and there was an indescribable stench. He felt a wave of fatigue. Using the cultivation technique to expel the poison had consumed a lot of his energy. Fortunately, the wounds had already turned red, so there would not be any future problems. After resting for a while, Ling Han stood up. He took a lantern and entered the depths of the cave to explore. Apart from human corpses, there were also rows of neatly arranged lizard eggs. They were pink, and just looking at the eggs gave them a rather cute feeling. However, when one thought about how they ate the corpses, that feeling was replaced with disgust. He revealed a trace of surprise, because he found a corpse among these corpses that was completely out of place in terms of clothing. This corpse was wearing a Taoist robe, and it held a broken sword in its hand. There was a fist-sized wound on its chest, which should have directly destroyed its heart. However, the strange thing was that blood was still slowly flowing out of this wound. Those lizard eggs were laid in the fresh blood on the ground. Could it be that these lizards were originally very ordinary, but they had rapidly evolved because of this fresh blood? Chapter 31-38. Ling Han tried to get closer to observe carefully, but he found that when he was about 3 meters away from the ancient corpse, he immediately felt a terrifying killing intent. He could clearly see that the originally calm air had turned into sharp blades, and the tips of the blades were all pointed at him. If Ling Han took another step forward, he would be hit by the sharp blades and be turned into mush. A corpse that had been dead for who knew how long still had such power? It could be imagined that this ancient corpse must have been a super expert when it was alive. Perhaps it had surpassed the opening meridian tier and stood at the peak of the martial art tier. But now, it had turned into a corpse, lying in this gloomy world. It was unknown how long it had been dead. How could a civilization completely disappear in a single day? Ling Han thought of the vast lands of the past. That was because it was controlled by the 5 sects of the immortal realm. They turned it into a huge cauldron, using all the living creatures as medicine to refine a large pill. Was it the same here? If it was, then it was very different. There were no eyes and ears of the 5 sects here. He took a few steps back and came to the side of the lizard eggs. Here, the killing intent was no longer obvious. Perhaps an ordinary lizard had come here unintentionally, and after eating the fresh blood here, it began its rapid evolution. It gave birth here, wanting its descendants to also absorb this kind of precious blood, thus developing its race into a powerful force in a short period of time. Perhaps it was because the time was too short that these beasts didn't develop intelligence. When the female lizard reached a certain level, it went to find food for the young lizard, which led to the mass disappearance of all the miners. As for the ancient site, it was probably a coincidence. The miners just happened to dig through there, but before they could report it, they were already destroyed. No matter what, this explanation made sense. Ling Han looked at the blood on the ground and felt a bit scared. This was human blood, and it had been dead for who knew how many years. Even if it was very nutritious, he still felt a psychological barrier. After hesitating for a while, he decided to forget about it. He began to return. As his power increased, so did his speed. It only took him a day and a half to return to the ancient Tao sect. After seeing Sun Jianfang, he told the whole story from beginning to end in full detail. Regarding this matter, he didn't feel the slightest bit guilty, so of course he didn't need to hide it. Moreover, he had already eaten the treasured fruit, so he wasn't afraid of others coveting it. What? There's actually such a thing? Sun Jianfang was furious. Li Zhangdan, Rui Yuanliang, and the others were too arrogant. They actually dared to commit murder within the sect's territory. Fortunately, the Taoist he had chosen was truly a monster. Not only had the three of them failed to kill Ling Han, but they had also lost their lives. An ancient ruin appeared in the mine. Sun Jianfang was shocked once more. This must be the true ruins of the ancient Tao sect, but the world hasn't changed completely, so only a portion of it has appeared. He was extremely excited and immediately called for an elder-level meeting to inform them of this matter. Ling Han was also present. He was the Taoist, the future sect master, so he naturally had the qualifications to be present. Moreover, he was the one who discovered it, so he naturally had to be the one to narrate it. After listening to him, the elders reacted the same as Sun Jianfang. They were all extremely excited. A new ruin had been discovered. What did this mean? A record left behind by an ancient powerhouse. They were stuck at the 10, 11, and 12 meridians because their talent wasn't high enough, and they didn't have proper guidance or a systematic cultivation method. In the previous civilization, the 12 meridians were definitely not the end of martial art. The development of martial art was unimaginable. As such, if one could obtain the records of a sect's martial art, studying it would greatly benefit them. This was a huge opportunity. How could these people not be excited? However, Ling Han's expression didn't change, and he thought that it was hopeless. His talent in formations surpassed everyone else's, and adding on the purple pendant's suppression, he was barely able to pick 3 treasured fruits. However, he still couldn't enter the house. As for the others, haha, now that he had the power of a 10 meridians, he didn't believe that anyone could surpass him. As such, these people could only be disappointed in the end. He didn't mention, much less the purple pendant. He only said that he had some attainments in formations. Otherwise, some of the old fellows would definitely be greedy. Soon, Sun Jianfang and the others reached a consensus to immediately head to the Jade Dragon mine. Ling Han also hurriedly washed up, then took some dried meat and dried rations and set off. After more than a day of travel, they once again arrived at the Jade Dragon mine. Ling Han was in charge of leading the group, and they first arrived at the ancient ruin with lanterns in their hands. Li Zhangdan's corpse was still lying there. When they saw his fatal wound, the elders all looked at Ling Han strangely. They all had rich battle experience, and could tell with a single glance that Ling Han had used absolute power to crush Li Zhangdan, and thus killed him. A 9 meridians cultivator had crushed another 9 meridians cultivator with his fist in a head-on confrontation. Moreover, it was a genius like Li Zhangdan. This showed the extent of Ling Han's strength. It had only been about 4 months, and this kid had already reached such a height. Some were fearful, while others had other ideas. For example, He Guan. He wondered if his granddaughter could be betrothed to Ling Han. Previously, he wanted to marry Li Zhangdan because of Li Zhangdan's future potential. Now compared to Ling Han, Li Zhangdan was practically trash. However, everyone's attention was quickly drawn to the ruins in front of them. It was such a large building that no one had ever set foot in. It was very likely that there were martial art classics from the previous civilization hidden within. Obtaining them might allow one to soar to the sky. They tried to advance, all of them careful. However, they only took one step before they all ran back pathetically. Some had their clothes torn, while others had their skin injured. Fortunately, none of them had their arms or legs broken. After all, they were all on guard. The treasure was right in front of them, but they could only look at it. Everyone felt an itch in their hearts, a kind of indescribable depression. Let's go take a look at that ancient corpse. Sun Jianfang made a decision with a wave of his hand. They came to another part of the mine. But before they reached it, the stench had already assaulted them. They couldn't help but cover their noses. The ancient corpse had appeared, but no one dared to approach it. They had a feeling that they would die. This should be the realm above the illuminating pulse realm. Gu Tang said excitedly. The road is not broken, the road is not broken. He had no descendants, and loved money and beauties the most. But in fact, martial art was his true pursuit. It was just that he could not advance any further, so he could only pursue women and money. Chapter 3140. At the beginning of the world's upheaval, much of the information from the first ruins was made public for everyone to study, in an attempt to find a way for humanity to escape their predicament. Among them were the simplest formations like the Three Origin Formation. There was also a rare herb collection that recorded large amounts of information on rare fruits. Now almost every force had a copy of this information, which was extremely practical. The Crouching Bell fruit was a treasure fruit recorded in the rare herb collection. It could allow cultivators with 9 meridians and above to smoothly advance by a stage. This was very meaningful. 9 meridians to 10 meridians was a qualitative leap. By releasing one's strength, one's battle prowess would multiply or even multiply. Because of this, the step from 9 to 10 meridians was extremely difficult. Even a genius like Li Zhongdan had been stuck at peak 9 meridians for more than a year, without any hope of breaking through. In the ancient Dao sect, the fastest person to break through to 10 meridians was Sun Jianfang at 54. At that time, there were treasures appearing all over the world, and there was no clear division of factions. Thus, it wasn't very difficult to obtain rare fruits. Most of the time, it depended on luck. But now it was different. Basically, all the famous mountains and lakes with treasures and spirit herbs were occupied by factions that wanted to snatch food from the tiger's mouth. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. The crouching caltrip fruit had appeared in a pool of water and was accidentally discovered by someone. However, there was still a python in the pool that had definitely reached 10 meridians. It was constantly guarding the crouching chestnut vine. If it was some other treasure fruit, then everyone would have been afraid of this python and might have let it go. But the crouching ling fruit was different. As long as one didn't reach 12 meridians, everyone would be jealous. As long as one didn't reach 12 meridians, everyone would be jealous. Moreover, this python definitely hadn't reached 12 meridians. But which faction didn't have a 12 meridian expert? This naturally boosted people's courage. Sun Jianfang would personally lead a team to the pond. But the biggest opponent wasn't the python, but the experts sent by other factions. Such a good thing would definitely cause a fight. Who didn't want a 10 meridian expert in their faction? If one cultivated by themselves, it would be difficult to reach that level before they were 70 or 80 years old. At that time, the body's functions would slowly deteriorate. No matter how strong one's secret power was, there was a limit to one's stamina, and it would definitely affect one's battle prowess. This was the principle that the fist was afraid of the young and strong. Therefore, after this news spread, the nearby forces would definitely be eager to make a move. There was no time to lose. In just a day, Ling Han followed Sun Jianfang on his journey, accompanied by Gu Tang and the other elders, as well as the younger generation like Nie Yang, Lao Lian and Tan Gaobua. These elders all had their own plans. They wanted to leave the crouching bell fruit for their descendants. As long as they ate it at the 9th meridian level, they would be able to reach the 10th meridian level in one go. If he could reach 10 meridians before the age of 30, his future would be limitless. This pool was in Sealed Mountain, and it would take about 10 days to travel from the ancient Dao sect. This was assuming there were no delays along the way, or else it would take even longer. Ling Han was baffled and asked, "It's been so long, could it be that the crouching caltrip fruit hasn't been picked yet?" Sun Jianfang smiled and said, "The crouching caltrip fruit hasn't ripened yet, so even if someone arrives now, they won't be able to pick it. At most, they'll just get rid of that python." So that was how it was. They traveled day and night, and only rested when they were tired. However, every day, When the sun rose, no one would miss the half an hour of cultivation. So they all practiced. Ling Han found an excuse to leave. He used the Monkey King's cultivation method to cultivate, and only after he finished did he meet up with everyone. However, he couldn't always find an excuse to leave. Sometimes Ling Han had to follow everyone and use the square fist to absorb the mysterious energy of the heavens and earth. However, there were too many impurities in the energy, so it was too impure. He needed to use the Monkey King's cultivation method to purify it, but it was slow and a waste of time. Luckily, it only took about 10 days. On the 11th day, they arrived at Sealed Mountain. There weren't any ruins here, so it wasn't occupied by any human power. There weren't many demonic beasts either, and they were at most 2 or 3 meridians. As such, very few people would come here. It was because a herb gatherer came here to try his luck and saw the python at the edge of a pool. He gathered his courage and went over to take a look, and he found the crouching bell fruit. That person sold this information to several forces, and in the end, the information was leaked, and everyone knew about it. Among Ling Han's group, there were as many as 8 people with 10 meridians and above. This force was too strong. Occasionally, they would run into wild beasts or demonic beasts, but they would all be killed with a palm or a punch from afar, becoming their next meal. Demonic beasts evolved and used their mysterious energy to refine their bodies. Their meat was also exceptionally delicious. Even if it was just roasted, it would still be delicious. Nie Yang, Tan Gaobua, and the rest of the younger generation usually stayed in the sect. Since there weren't any demonic beasts in the sea-level mountain, they didn't want to go back. Instead, they returned with a sumptuous meal. As he walked, Ling Han saw too many city ruins. Most of them had been abandoned, while some had become the playground of demonic beasts, occupied by them. Instead, humans built new cities with iron castles to defend against demonic beasts. But even so, there were still castles that fell. There was a place that left Sun Jianfang and the others speechless for a long time. This was because this castle had been flattened with a single stomp. Just how enormous was his body, and how terrifying was his strength, to be able to flatten a steel fortress made of earthen yuan iron, with a single stomp. If such a terrifying beast attacked the ancient Dao sect, would the ancient Dao sect be able to stop it? According to Sun Jianfang's guess, some demonic beasts had broken through to the meridian opening realm first, and their power had increased tremendously, which was why they had such terrifying power. This was not good news. The reason the human race was able to survive was because a 12-meridian cultivator had appeared among the humans, and they could rival the strongest of the demonic beasts. However, once a 12-meridian cultivator appeared among the demonic beasts, the balance would be broken. There's no need to worry too much. The ancient Dao sect has a formation protecting it, so it's not a place that any random cat or dog can casually charge in. Sun Jianfang saw that everyone's morale was low, so he comforted them. Then he said something very domineering. Besides, this old man is here, so what is there to be afraid of? This was the ancient Dao sect's way of tempering oneself. Back then, it was Sun Jianfang who had used his fists to flatten Peaceful Sea Mountain. Even the demonic beasts had to retreat and give up this treasure mountain. Guan and the others all nodded, but they were also worried. Sun Jianfang was old, and he was close to 150 years old. How many more years could he last? Chapter 3141. The Sealed Range Mountain was a continuous mountain range with countless dangerous peaks. The target of Ling Han's group was a mountain peak called Sky Observation Peak. The mountain was extremely steep, but fortunately, they were at least 7 meridians. Their strength was as high as 5,000 kilograms, and they were agile. The steep peak was not a big problem for them. However, the mountain was dangerous and difficult to climb, so they still spent half a day to reach the peak. An ordinary mountain peak would of course be sharp, like a sharp sword that pierced through the clouds. However, this mountain peak was flat like a bald head. On such a flat mountaintop, there was a pool of water. It was oval in shape. The longest part was about 100 zhang, and the shortest part was only about 500 zhang. For it to appear on the mountaintop, this pool was really not small. The sun was clearly high up in the sky, but everyone felt a chill. They had to circulate their energy and activate their blood in order to avoid being frozen. This cold air came from the pool. Above the pool, because the hot air was cold, it turned into clouds, giving off a feeling of floating immortals. Naturally, Ling Han's group wasn't the only one on the mountain peak. There were 9 other groups of people, and they were all clearly separated, each occupying an area. The number of people in each group varied. The smallest group had 9 people, while the largest had more than 20 people. However, there was one thing in common, and that was that there were old and young people, and the age gap was very large. The ancient Dao sect is here. When they saw Sun Jianfang's group, these forces spoke one after another. Even Sun Jianfang made a move. Hehe, it looks like the ancient Dao sect really cares about this. Didn't your nether sect send sect master Ming ruining as well? Hehe, for the sake of the crouching bell fruit, this is very normal. Sun Jianfang's gaze swept across, pausing briefly on every group. He revealed a smile and said, "There are quite a few old friends here." "Old Sun, you're not dead yet?" A white-haired old man called out. His body was thick and sturdy, and despite his age, he was like a human-shaped bear that emitted a shocking sense of power. "This is Ji Yuanlong, the sovereign of the Divine Wind sect." Sun Jianfang introduced to Ling Han, and the rest in a low voice, then laughed out loud. "Old man Ji, you're not even dead yet you have the nerve to curse me? You already have 12 meridians. Why are you still here?" Ji Yuanlong said. Sun Jianfang shook his head. "Just like you, I can't let it go." Ji Yuanlong said. "I heard that your ancient Dao sect has a genius called Li something Dan. This old man also has a great-grandson who has made some progress. How about we let them spar?" He even waved his hand, and a young man walked out. He was similarly tall and sturdy like an iron tower. The young man cupped his fists and said to Ling Han, "I am Ji Pingfei. I would like to ask senior brother Li for some advice." The corner of Sun Jianfang's mouth couldn't help but twitch slightly. Li Changdan had betrayed the sect, and had long been killed by Ling Han. How could he come out to exchange pointers? However, this was a family scandal, and naturally, there was no reason for it to be publicized. He said lightly, "Li Zhongdan didn't come." Ji Yuanlong glared at him and said, "Old Sun, are you afraid of losing?" Sun Jianfang looked at Ji Yuanlong. "If you don't like it, I'll beat you until you do." Ji Yuanlong immediately became angry and rolled up his sleeves. "If you want to fight, then let's fight. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Haha, both of you please calm down. There's no need for such a strong smell of gunpowder." Someone came out to mediate. He was also unbelievably old, and his white eyebrows drooped down to about an inch, covering his eyes. No one knew if he could see clearly. "How about we compete to see who can kill the python in the water first?" This was Azure Feather City's Chao Tsong, someone from the same generation as Sun Jianfang and Ji Yuanlong. Naturally, he was also the strongest king of the 12 meridians. "How do we kill it?" Ji Yuanlong rolled his eyes. His temper was very fiery, as if he didn't like anyone. "We can hold our breaths for at most 10 minutes, but this pool is extremely deep. There's no way we can kill it in such a short amount of time." The gallbladder of a 9-meridian snake, and above is good stuff. An old woman clicked her tongue. According to the ancient books, it can neutralize 100 poisons, and also nourish the eyes. What's the point of saying that? Ji Yuanlong still had a bad temper. "Can you force the python out? Or can you hold your breath for half an hour? I can't be bothered to talk to you." The old woman waved her sleeves and didn't reply. She knew this old man had a strange temper, and didn't want to lower herself to his level. "Actually, it's not like there's no way." An old man walked out, wearing a Taoist robe, and waving a feather fan in his hand. He had the air of an immortal, but seeing this old man walk out, Sun Jianfang and Chao Tsong both frowned. Even Ji Yuanlong didn't retort. "Old poison, it's a miracle that you haven't died after playing with poisons all day." It was the old woman who spoke. The old man in the Taoist robe laughed. "If we still don't break through, we'll have 1 foot in the coffin in 10 years at most." Sun Jianfang and the others all shivered. The end of one's lifespan had always been a problem they had deliberately avoided. This old poison was from the same generation as them. Back then, he was a doctor who saved the dying and healed the injured. But who knew that after the cataclysm, he would go further and further in playing with poisons, making everyone wary. Later, he established the 100 Poison sect, and took in many disciples, all of whom were skilled in playing with poisons. Poisons had always been feared by people. Even a 12-meridian king didn't dare to be careless. Old Poison, do you have any suggestions? Ji Yuanlong asked, his tone a bit polite. Simple, the Old Poison said indifferently. He took out a bottle from his robe and walked to the edge of the pool. He opened the stopper and carefully dripped a drop of liquid. He revealed a smile and said, "This is a new type of poison that I've meticulously researched. Don't underestimate it. Although it's only a drop, it can turn the entire pool into a pool of poison." Everyone came over to take a look. They saw that the originally clear pool was rapidly turning black, and there was a faint pungent smell that made them feel dizzy. This was truly terrifying. Just the smell alone was enough to make people feel so uncomfortable. What would happen if they really touched it? Boom! At this moment, the water surface rippled, and a huge snake as thick as a bucket suddenly broke out of the water. It transformed into a waterfall and soared onto the shore. As expected, this poison was too terrifying. Even a king-level demonic beast couldn't withstand it. As soon as it came onto the shore, the huge snake coiled its body, and its head protected its mountain-like body. It looked around proudly, and its two eyes were like lanterns, exuding a terrifying light. Old Poison, you also poisoned the crouching bell fruit to death. Ji Yuanlong roared. Don't worry, a treasure like the crouching bell fruit is only afraid of fire, and its poison is harmless, the Old Poison said indifferently. Now that this big snake has come out, how do you guys want to kill it? Chapter 3142. If this serpent was hidden in the water, then even kings of 12 tribes would have to frown. They wouldn't have any confidence in killing it. But it was a different story once it was ashore. It was like a tiger without its teeth, no longer threatening. That was because it was only 10 tribes, and had just stepped into the ranks of kings. How about this? Said the old woman. We don't have many years left to live. Why don't we give this opportunity to the younger generation? What do you mean? Asked Ji Yuanlong. The older generation can't take action. Let the younger generation do it. Whoever kills this vicious creature will get the crouching caltrip fruit. What do you think? Many people were tempted. If they fought over the crouching caltrip fruit, then the kings on their side might be crippled or even killed. Of course, it wasn't worth it to sacrifice a king for a king-level fruit. But this was a competition in the younger generation, and it was a python they were killing. That could avoid this problem. I agree. Sun Jianfang was the first to nod. Sect Master, Gu Tang and He Guan called out at the same time. They naturally didn't feel at ease leaving such an important competition to Ling Han and the other juniors. The crouching caltrip fruit was a treasure they also coveted. Moreover, if Ling Han or Nie Yang really obtained it, would they have the nerve to ask for it? I've made up my mind. Sun Jianfang displayed his decisive side, not giving them a chance to speak. They could only reluctantly shut their mouths. They weren't the top kings of 12 tribes, so they couldn't argue with him. Alright, I agree as well. There's no need to hurt the harmony. Good. Let's do that. All the factions agreed. Since no one from the older generation was participating, they were full of confidence in the younger generation they brought with them. The four of you must work together, Sun Jianfang said solemnly to Ling Han and the others. Yes. Ling Han and the others nodded. Sun Jianfang's intention was obviously to prevent internal strife in front of a foreign enemy. The four of them stepped forward, and the youths of the other factions also stepped forward. There were around 30 people from 10 factions. Everyone surrounded the giant python, but no one dared to act rashly. This was a 10-meridian king, and it was a beast at that. Normally speaking, it would be able to fight against 2 or 3 human 10-meridian kings. They were competing to see who could kill the giant serpent first. The person who attacked first had no benefits at all. One of them looked over at Ling Han and said, "What's wrong?" After Li Changdan became the Dao child, He started to put on airs and only sent you guys out. Aren't you just here to be bystanders? This was Yuan Jilung's disciple. Looks like their lineage was led astray by Yuan Jilung. Another person said. So what if Li Chongdan is here? He's just 9 meridians. It was a tall and slender man with an arrogant look on his face. Just 9 meridians. TSK. It sounded like he was a 10 meridian king. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, this person arrogantly said, I am Azure Feather City's Sima Rong. Greetings to everyone. He cupped his fists towards everyone, seemingly very courteous, but the arrogance on his face was like something else. Brother Sima, in your eyes 9 meridians doesn't seem to be much, someone said to Sima Rong. Hee. Sima Rong only laughed, and then looked at the giant python. Those who haven't opened 10 meridians should obediently retreat to the side. Don't seek your own death. Hiss, everyone was shocked. From what he said, it seemed like he really did have 10 meridians. But how is that possible? In the past 100 years, apart from the earliest batch of people, everyone had to reach 60 or 70 to open 10 meridians and enter the king realm. But Sima Rong looked like he was only 24 or 25 years old, and he had already opened 10 meridians. If this was true, then he had undoubtedly set a record. You guys should go out and see more. Who knows how big the outside world is, Sima Rong said proudly. He swept a disdainful gaze over everyone, and then with a long whistle, he charged towards the giant python. He really was ferocious. He dared to charge out alone against a vicious beast of the level of a 10 meridians king. At least this courage was worthy of admiration. Shwa, the giant python also began its attack. Its thick and long tail whipped over, bringing with it a howling wind. This snake was as thick as a bucket, and about 30 meters long. It probably weighed a few thousand kilograms. How terrifying was it to whip over with the force of around 50,000 kilograms in 10 meridians? Bang! With this attack, Sima Rong was immediately sent flying. But the giant python had also lost quite a few scales, and blood spurted out. Although this was negligible compared to the giant python's huge body, it was enough to show Sima Rong's strength. This guy definitely had 10 meridians. Seeing this scene, everyone was speechless. No wonder Sima Rong was so arrogant. Such a young 10 meridians practitioner did have the right to be arrogant. But how was that possible? There were indeed geniuses who could reach 9 meridians in their 20s. Li Zhongdan was an example. But to take another step forward was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Just how did this guy cultivate? Could it be that he had eaten the crouching bell fruit before? Ha 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 ha. Sima Rong laughed and charged back. The giant python's whip had only sent him flying, but hadn't injured him. Go! The others looked at each other and moved. Since Sima Rong was the main force, then they only needed to deal the finishing blow. This was a competition of who could kill the giant python, not who had the greatest contribution. There would be a chance. But they had obviously underestimated the giant python's battle ability. It only turned around and whipped. Boom! A terrifying gust of wind swept over. Pung pung pung. 7 or 8 people were immediately sent flying. Releasing force externally, there was no need for it to touch the body. Ling Han could clearly see that the effective range of 10 meridians force externally was about 3 feet. Any further, and the force would begin to dissipate. 10 feet, or so was no threat at all. Therefore, although it looked like Sima Rong had collided with the giant python, there had actually been no actual contact, but a clash of force externally. But in a situation where they were unable to externally release force, how could the others be a match for the giant python? The difference in strength was too great, and the giant python's body was a superweapon. With a sweep of its tail, no one was a match at all. If they didn't have the power of the 10 meridians, they could only rely on numbers to defeat this giant python and exhaust its power. After all, there was a limit to the strength of a king tier, and it could not be squandered endlessly. A bunch of trash. Sima Rong had maintained some modesty before, but now he completely looked down on the others. He charged over, waving his fists angrily. All of you get out of my way. Don't get in my way. Pung pung pung. As he charged over, the gust of wind he kicked up sent those nearby flying. showing his overwhelming strength. Chapter 3144. Sun Jianfeng's expression did not change, and he only revealed a faint smile. Not necessarily. Why don't you all watch quietly? Bang! Ling Han exploded with power, and his figure was strangely fast. This kind of explosive power does seem like 10 meridians. Meng Ruining was the first to exclaim. Not necessarily. Some people are naturally fast, and it's not strange for a 9 meridian to match a 10 meridian king. Haha, if the ancient Dao sect can also produce a young 10 meridian king, that would be too rare. No one believed it. It was already a miracle for such a young 10 meridian king to appear. How could there be two? Wait and see. Ling Han had already arrived. His iron fist clenched, and he used the square fist, heavily striking the giant python. Bang! The giant python was in the middle of a fierce battle with Si Marong. So how could it care about Ling Han? It was hit head-on, and under the huge force, it was sent flying more than 6 meters away, flattening the protruding rocks on the ground. But it was not made of steel, and this rubbing caused many scales to fall off, leaving behind a lot of blood. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This was definitely the power of 10 meridians, more than 15,000 kilograms, maybe even 50,000 kilograms. No, his power only exploded when his fist landed on the snake's body. Chao Tsung immediately saw that something was wrong. In other words, he did not release his power. Releasing power can not only hit the opponent faster, but also effectively protect oneself, avoiding the weaknesses in our bodies. But he did not use it. There's only one reason. He's also 9 meridians. Everyone exclaimed. A 9 meridian king could have the power of 10 meridians, and at the peak of 10 meridians at that. How could they believe it? 2 monsters. One broke through 10 meridians before 30, and even cultivated 4 gravity. The other looks like he's only 20, but he has the power of a peak 10 meridians at 9 meridians. Is this still the martial art world we know? Si Marong's eyes also twitched. He was already 100% confident in killing the giant python, but Ling Han's sudden appearance surprised him. Such great power. Since when could 9 meridians be so awesome? But then again, he wanted to compete with himself. Without 10 meridians, one could not be called a king. You want to fight with me? Si Marong charged over. His target wasn't the python, but Ling Han. He had strong confidence that he could easily suppress them even if he had to fight 1 against 2. Didn't we agree on a competition? Ling Han asked. They were competing to see who could kill the python first. Why was it that when it came to Si Marong, he was the one who made the wrong move? How can I just randomly stretch out my hand? Si Marong no longer attacked the python, instead focusing on attacking Ling Han. So what? Ling Han charged forward fearlessly. Bam! The two of them exchanged a blow. Ling Han used square fist, while Si Marong still used dragon break flash, overlapping 4 layers of power, and each layer was as high as 50,000 kilograms. Ling Han's figure shook, and he retreated 9 steps, then 7, then 5, before he could steady his stance. On the other hand, Si Marong didn't retreat at all. There was no choice. Si Marong had 10 meridians, and could release his power. Ling Han's punch didn't even hit his body, so naturally it couldn't affect him. Under the 4 layers of power, Ling Han retreated again and again, retreating 3 times before he could stabilize his footing. This kid's regular power is actually above Si Marong's. That's right, otherwise he would have retreated 4 times, not 3 times. His 50,000 pounds of power is actually not his limit. Everyone was shocked speechless. In such a confrontation, although Ling Han was at a disadvantage, in terms of true power, Ling Han was a notch higher. How could anyone believe this? 9 meridians was actually stronger than 10 meridians. Was this still the world they knew? Si Marong's eyes also tightened. For the first time he felt threatened. A mere 9 meridians actually surpassed him in terms of raw power. If it wasn't for him being able to release his power, if it wasn't for the 4 layers of gravity, wouldn't he be at a disadvantage? Without 10 meridians you're still an ant, he said coldly. So what if you're a monster? You're still only 9 meridians, you can't compete with me. And as long as he ate that crouching cowtrip fruit, he would be able to open up 11 meridians. At that time, he would be able to kill Ling Han. So what if Sun Jianfang made a move? Even if he couldn't fight to a draw, he could at least retreat unscathed. Is that so? Ling Han said indifferently, his fists moving, clashing head-on with Si Marong. But this wasn't just a battle between the two of them. The giant python also came up and launched an attack. In its eyes, Si Marong and Ling Han were both enemies, so it naturally treated them equally. Its giant tail whipped over, and the two fought together. This became a three-way battle. Ling Han, Si Marong, and the giant python all had to fight 2 other opponents at the same time. This was not only dangerous but also more exhausting. How long can you last? Si Marong sneered. Unable to release his power, Ling Han could only take each attack head-on. His weak point would undoubtedly be exposed, and there was no way he could last more than a few moves. Ling Han ignored him. Apart from Monkey Bro, no one knew how shocking his life force was. Although his whole body was numb from the shock of Si Marong and the giant python's attacks, he recovered in an instant. Even if there was a wound left, it would quickly stop bleeding and form a scar. This was a characteristic he'd brought out from the divine stone. He'd once been the strongest celestial venerable, so how could he not have any benefits? Unexpectedly, Ling Han was especially able to hold on. It had already been a few hundred moves, but he was still attacking and defending. He wasn't the first to collapse. On the other hand, Si Marong and the giant python were facing the biggest problem. Their power was about to dry up. There was no way around it. Their power was stored in their meridians, and only when the sun rose could they sense the mysterious power of heaven and earth. They could either cultivate or replenish their consumption, or use the spirit-gathering formation to extract the power from the jade seed. But now they needed to do both. The more they fought, the less it would be. Eventually, it would be exhausted. On the other hand, Ling Han was a fresh force, and his meridians had been opened wide enough, so he could store more power than 10 meridians. So he would definitely be able to last longer than Si Marong and the giant python. Si Marong couldn't believe that he would be defeated in such a way. He couldn't accept that a 10-meridian king would lose to a 9-meridian king. No matter what the reason was, it was a great humiliation. He would be laughed at by others. Scram! Ling Han punched out heavily. The advantage of the square fist was that it could output power steadily without any fluctuations. Bang! Si Marong was instantly sent flying. After using up all his power, he was actually not much stronger than an ordinary person. Ling Han, on the other hand, attacked the giant python. Bang bang bang. He punched out 19 times in a row. Although it wasn't the overlapping power, his punches were fast enough. They hit almost the same place, and the power was not much weaker. After 19 punches, the giant python's head was blown up by Ling Han. The end of this chapter. Chapter 3145. The giant python was a very active creature. Even though it had lost its head, it did not die immediately. Instead, it rolled on the ground, stirring up sand and stones. But the result was out. The person who killed the python was Ling Han. Who would have thought of this before? Si Marong was gasping for breath, and his gaze towards Ling Han was filled with anger and confusion. How could a 9-meridian cultivator be so strong? Ha 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 ha. Sun Jianfang laughed heartily. Ling Han had really made him proud this time, suppressing his peers and becoming number 1. Humph, I just got lucky, Chao Tsong said coldly, displeasure written all over his face. Even though he did not know how Si Marong had broken through to 10 meridians, nor did he know where he had learned the 4 gravity fields, but this was someone from Azure Feather City. If Si Marong lost, he would lose face as well. Haha, 9 meridians against 10 meridians. He won. What else is there to say? Sun Jianfang glanced sideways at Chao Kong. Why don't we wait for Ling Han to advance to 10 meridians and let them fight again? These words rendered Chao Tsong speechless. That was because once Ling Han reached 10 meridians, his strength would definitely be able to crush Si Marong. And he would also be able to release his strength externally, eliminating his greatest weakness. Even if Sima Rong had 4 gravitational forces, it would probably be very difficult for him to win. After all, under the suppression of absolute power, even the 4 forces of gravity would be defeated. Everyone, this hidden caltrip fruit belongs to my ancient Tao sect. There should be no problems, right? Sun Jianfang laughed. All the big shots were speechless. They were all people who cared about their reputation. How could they slap themselves in the face like that? Moreover, the ones making the decisions were all peak kings of the 12 bloodlines. They didn't need the crouching bell fruit, so they would feel a bit uncomfortable and unwilling at most, but they wouldn't feel the pain of having their flesh cut off. Let's go. Ji Yuanlong waved his hand. He had the worst temper and liked to argue with others, but he was also a straightforward person. Everyone shook their heads and prepared to leave. They were startled and looked up at the sky. A huge shadow was cast down as a huge ship appeared in the sky. It was completely black and looked like a steel monster. What is this? The older generation had all seen airplanes with their own eyes, and the younger ones had also seen information about airplanes on the optical supercomputer. They knew that there was something that could fly in the sky without wings. But the problem was that no aircraft could match the one in the sky. There was only one point. Other than those with propellers, no other aircraft could fly at such a slow speed or even hover. Furthermore, they did not see any propellers on this battleship. This battleship was not small, about 300 feet long. It was a large ship in the water, but it cast a huge shadow in the air. There was an emblem on the bow of the ship, depicting a 5-clawed golden dragon. It was vivid and lifelike, as if it could come to life. Everyone was shocked. Ling Han was shocked as well, because wasn't this a spaceship from the Yuan world? Driven by the formation, it could be fast or slow, moving or stationary. In this world, this was something that should never have appeared. Could it be that this was dug out from the ruins of the previous civilization? Ling Han could not determine whether this ship had been dug out from the ground, or if it had been created using ancient techniques. But it definitely could not be underestimated. That was because there were black cannon muzzles protruding from the hull of the ship, giving him an extremely terrifying feeling of threat. The battleship slowly descended under everyone's shock. Fortunately, this mountain peak was big enough. If it was any other mountain, it might not be able to accommodate it. After the spaceship landed, there was a floating ladder at the bow of the ship, and people walked down one after another. There were 10 people in total, and the leader was a woman who looked to be in her mid-20s. She was in the prime of her life, and her skin was so tender that it seemed like water could drip out of it. Even though only her hands, neck, and face were exposed, she still had a kind of enchanting beauty. She was dressed in a dark green outfit, which completely outlined her voluptuous figure. Especially her breasts, which were tightly stretched by the leather material, completely stood out, like a ripe peach. She was twisting her body, but the 9 men behind her did not even look at her. It was as if the person walking in front of them was not a woman at all. Si Marong greets Flag Captain Lien. Si Marong shot forward and knelt on one knee. Seeing this scene, all the bigwigs were stunned. A dignified 10-step king was actually kneeling to someone? A king naturally had to have the dignity of a king. How could he kneel like this? Chao Tsung's face darkened. A 10-branch king could already represent a faction to a certain extent. Now that Si Marong was kneeling to someone, it was equivalent to kneeling to the dignity of Azure Feather City. How could he not be angry? Si Marong, what are you doing? He said sternly. However, Si Marong paid no attention to him and continued kneeling firmly. The mysterious beauty glanced at Chao Tsung and opened her bright red lips. How dare you make a ruckus in front of me? What punishment do you deserve? 30 slaps, a man behind her said. Execute, the mysterious beauty said indifferently. Understood. The man immediately walked out. Even though he was standing behind the black-clothed beauty like a bodyguard, the moment he stood out, he emitted a powerful aura. If it was another person, they would have been shocked. Chao Tsung's expression changed slightly. This man was no more than 30 years old, but the feeling he gave off was full of pressure. Could it be that he was also a 12-branch king tier? The problem was this man was only 30 years old, How could he possibly have 12 branches? Old man, you've lived for so long, but you still don't know how to control your mouth, the man said coldly. He pushed off the ground and charged over. Boom, he punched out, and the sound of sonic booms instantly rang out. However, the speed of the sonic booms could not compare to his punch. He had only just raised his hand, and his fist had already smashed in front of Chao Kong. Chao Tsung humphed. He raised his right hand and blocked this punch. Pung, the two of them clashed. However, they did not collide. Instead, they stopped about 3 feet apart. It was as if there was an invisible wall between them that was blocking them. Power was released. A battle between King Tears. Boom, the power vibrated, and the two of them took a few steps back. This time, the expressions of Sun Jianfang and the others became solemn. Although Chao Tsung had not been at a disadvantage in this exchange, he had not gained the upper hand either. This man had 12 branches. How was this possible? The appearance of Si Marong with 10 branches had already shocked them to the point of being unable to accept it. Now a 30-year-old with 12 branches had appeared. Heavens, what was wrong with this world? Savage natives, you really are weak. The man laughed and attacked again. This time, he did not just throw out a casual punch. His fist was covered in layers of light. End of chapter. Chapter 3146. A Beautiful Romance. 5 Gravity. Ji Yuanlong's eyes flashed, and his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. Just now, Si Marong's 4 Gravity had already caused everyone's jaws to drop. Now another person had appeared who could use 5 Gravity. A 30-year-old 12 Meridians and 5 Gravity. The impact of these two added together was just too great. More importantly, this person, who Sun Jianfang and the others had seen as a monster, was actually just one of the black-robed beauty's subordinates. This was even more difficult to accept. They could only hope that this man had only submitted to the black-robed woman because of her beauty. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare believe it. Chao Tsung did his best to meet the attack, but their raw power was about the same. However, one could only use 3 Gravity, while the other could use 5 Gravity. The difference was naturally enormous. To use an inappropriate analogy, this was like 5 people fighting 3 people. Everyone's strength was about the same, so who would win and who would lose? Chao Tsung quickly fell into a disadvantage. Under the suppression of the opponent's 5 Gravity, he struggled to hold on. He had no power to fight back. Of course, it wasn't that he didn't have a chance to turn the tables. Under 5 Gravity, his opponent's energy consumption would definitely be far greater than his. As long as he could hold on until his opponent ran out of energy, he could easily win. But the problem was that he couldn't hold on for that long. His opponent's attacks were endless, like mercury spilling into the ground. They came wave after wave, making him feel like he could collapse at any moment. Brother Chao, I'll help you, Meng Ruining roared and entered the fray. They had known each other since the upheaval of the world. Later on, they had all established their own factions, but they hadn't been very far from each other. They would still interact with each other, and if they encountered a powerful demonic beast wave, they would help each other out. Thus, now that an unfamiliar faction had appeared and was clearly stepping on them, they naturally had to work together against a common enemy. Wang Feng, you go, the black-robed woman said indifferently. Yes, Flagmaster. Another man walked out from behind her and went to meet Meng Ruining. Bang bang bang. The moment they exchanged blows, everyone was shocked once more. This man, who looked to be only in his 30s, was also a supreme king with 12 meridians. Furthermore, he had also mastered the 5 Gravity realm. Meng Ruining was at a complete disadvantage as soon as he swung his fists. This caused Ji Yuanlong, the old woman, and the others, who were about to step forward, to stop in their tracks. Could it be that the 9 people behind this woman were all experts with 12 meridians? Each of them could unleash 5 times the gravity? Such a lineup was too terrifying, and it was enough to sweep away any power. Mind your own business. The black-robed woman spoke lightly. With a wave of her hand, a group of crossbowmen appeared on the ship, aiming their crossbows at the group. Being pointed at by this crossbow, everyone felt an intense chill, and they were even more puzzled. One must know that once one reached 12 meridians, their reflexes would be incomparably sharp. They would not even fear firearms, because they could send bullets flying with a single punch. However, being aimed at by the crossbow made these experts feel even more uncomfortable than being pointed at by a gun. No one dared to act rashly. Even the old poisonous creature was obedient. He had originally wanted to take the lead and release his poison. With no one to help, Chao Tsung was quickly defeated. The man pressed down on his mouth, causing his face to turn bright red, and he spat out blood. He was the lord of a city, and he was in charge of thousands of people. He stood at the peak of martial art, but now he was being pressed down on the ground and slapped by an expert of the same cultivation level. How could he endure this? After slapping Chao Tsung 30 times, the man immediately retreated, standing behind the black-robed woman like a servant. On the other side, Wang Feng also retreated after forcing Meng Ruining back. He had only stopped Meng Ruining from helping. Chao Tsung spat out blood repeatedly. This was not because he had been heavily injured, but because he had been angered. Only now did the black-robed woman look at Sima Rong and wave her hand. Stand up. Thank you, Flag Master. Sima Rong stood up. Although he had been kneeling for so long, there was no dissatisfaction on his face. Everyone was both curious and shocked. Just what was this woman's background and identity to be able to command so many kings of the 12 bloodlines and make Sima Rong throw away his dignity as a king? I am Lian Xuerong, Flag Master of the black-green flag of Xianbei Country's Crouching Tiger City, said the black-robed woman. I've come south this time to bring you all under the rule of my Xianbei Country. Sun Jianfang and the others all smiled coldly. They were all hegemons of their own regions. How could they tolerate being under someone else? Moreover, they weren't being recruited by Xianbei Country, but Crouching Tiger City. It wasn't even the lord of the city who had come in person, but a flag master. Haha, they were looking down on them too much. Lian Xuerong's gaze swept over them. Don't think that coming under the rule of my Xianbei Country is an embarrassing thing. If it weren't for His Majesty's desire to bring good fortune to the world, who would be willing to set foot in such a desolate place? She wanted them to submit and surrender, but she still had a look of disdain on her face. It was really uncomfortable. I'll give you 10 minutes to consider. Lian Xuerong waved her hand and looked at Sima Rong. Have you found any good seedlings? Sima Rong immediately glanced at Ling Han out of the corner of his eye, but quickly retracted it. Flag Master, it's hard to find outstanding people in this desolate place. Lian Xuerong nodded slowly. This place was too remote, and martial art was still in its infancy. It was a great joke for a 12 meridian to be able to establish a sect. It wasn't strange that there weren't any outstanding talents here. Their conversation wasn't loud, so Sun Jianfang and the others didn't hear it. They only thought that Sima Rong was snitching on them. No wonder this person had broken through to 10 meridians at the age of 24 or 25. Just look at them. All the people they'd sent were kings of 12 meridians, and they were only in their 30s. Just what kind of ancient heritage had Xianbei Country obtained that they had a special method to help people reach 10 meridians, or even higher? Flag Master, there's a crouching caltrip fruit in the pool. I've specially offered it to you, Sima Rong said. Crouching caltrip fruit. Lian Xuerong smiled faintly. Although it's not all that valuable, it can still be called a treasure fruit. Wang Feng, go take a look at the fruit. If it's ripe, pluck it. Wang Feng took a step forward and was about to jump into the pool, but Ling Han stood up and said, Wait. Kid, do you have any objections? Wang Feng sneered. He naturally didn't care about anyone here. Yes. Ling Han nodded. This crouching caltrip fruit is mine. Why would you say that? Wang Feng smiled. You planted it. Ling Han pointed at the python in the distance and said, This is the demonic beast that guarded the treasured fruit. I killed it, so this treasured fruit should belong to me. Oh. Wang Feng was surprised. Based on his experience, he only needed to look at the python's size to know that it was a 10 meridians beast. This kid in front of him was 10 meridians? End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.